My name's Christian Johnson. I'm the Dean of Widener University Commonwealth Law School, and welcome to our third annual Veterans Court Symposium. First, of course, we would like to welcome all of our veterans and those that are in service right now serving our country. We're grateful for all that you've done for us. We'd like to welcome all of our judges, our state and county and local officials, and all those who work in this area and serve our veteran population. This is a special week for Widener University Commonwealth Law School. It's been 30 years since our law school was founded here in Harrisburg. We have a big celebration next week as our anniversary weekend. We're proud of all the time that we've been here in Harrisburg, and as part of our mission, we have our Veterans Initiative over here. We're striving to become the preeminent law school here in Pennsylvania for veterans, and we have a very active student population of veterans and also a lot of terrific activities going on, probably the most important of which is our annual Veterans Court Symposium. I was thinking, if you pardon me for just a moment, about the importance of this particular event. This event is very unusual in that society in general is honoring veterans now and provides discounts and all kinds of special treatment. My daughter is serving in Korea, and they routinely give her a better seat on the airplane and things like that as she shows up and does all these kinds of things. Veterans courts are special, though, because this is an effort to help veterans that have lost their way, and oftentimes have lost a way that in a superficial sense is disappointing. These are veterans that have come home after being heroes and after serving their country and have managed to lose their way and have engaged in behavior that again, in a superficial sense, society says is not acceptable. And they find themselves trapped in our court system and wondering how they got there. And what's special about this effort is that we're here because a lot of, for the most part, the veterans that enter into veterans courts are there because the experience that they had serving our country has somehow affected them, that they would act out inappropriately upon their return. And this is where our country is truly trying to show our veteran population that will step up and help them and work with them from problems that was caused by their service, whether it be from PTSD or opioid addictions, injuries, family problems that they had while serving our country. And it's truly a noble and selfless effort. As all of you know, it's something that is difficult and time-consuming and requires a lot of sacrifice on the part of our judges and our counties and all of those that are serving our veterans. But as you listen today, you'll hear stories about the kinds of changes and all the good that these courts do to help our men and women who have returned from service get their lives back on track and in a way that they feel good about themselves and in a way that doing the things that we should be doing as a country to serve them. And so we're thrilled you're all here, and we look forward to a very interesting morning and discussion about the good that veterans courts are doing for our veterans. I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Justice Deborah Todd. She was elected to the Supreme Court in 2007, and she is such a great friend of our law school that I oftentimes forget that she did not go here. And I've always have to remind myself that she went to the terrific school of Pitt Law School in Pittsburgh, but we claim her as a friend and as an honorary graduate, if nothing else. And what is particularly important and special about Justice Todd is she is a huge proponent for veterans. Her spouse served our country as well, and we're grateful that she's taken so much time. I believe this is probably the third or fourth time that she's spoken here for us, which represents a sacrifice on her part, given that she sits primarily in Pittsburgh. So please join me in welcoming Justice Todd.
Good morning, everyone. It's my privilege to be here at Widener University's Commonwealth Law School once again for your third annual Veterans Court Continuing Legal and Judicial Education program. I'm glad to see so many of you here with us today. Thank you, Dean Johnson, for that nice introduction and for inviting me today. I am always impressed with you in particular and with your law school. The effort that you make to embrace our veterans community in Pennsylvania is awe-inspiring, and I truly thank you for that. I bring you greetings from Chief Justice Saylor and from all of my colleagues on the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. I'd like to acknowledge Pennsylvania Adjutant General Anthony Corelli. I don't know if he's here yet, Dean, but he'll be coming a little later. And I'd like to acknowledge Angela Lowry. Would you stand, Angela, for those of you who don't know Angela? She is our problem-solving court coordinator for AOPC, the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts, and she is responsible for interacting with and coordinating not only the Veterans Courts, but all of our other problem-solving courts. So she has a very big job, and we thank you, Angela, for everything you do. To all of our judges, particularly our VET court judges who are here, I know we have Judge Butts, Judge Treblecock, Judge, yes, of course. Could you all stand? Judge Butts, yes. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and I know we have some more. Philadelphia is in the house, yes. I know that we'll have some more judges here as the day goes on. You are the glue that holds these courts together, and without you, obviously, our veterans courts would not be possible. The county commissioners that are coming today, I'm not sure if they're here yet, but they play a major role as well. Dean, are any of them here now, or do they come later, the county commissioners? Well, nice to see you, and thank you to all of our county commissioners. It's my honor to serve as the Supreme Court's liaison to our veterans courts in Pennsylvania. I'm not a veteran, but as Dean Johnson mentioned, I am the wife of a veteran, retired Army Colonel Steve Todd, who's here with me in the back row there. So I'm the next best thing on the court to a veteran. I'm very proud of my husband's 29 years of military service, 6.5 of which were spent on active duty and included activation during Operation Desert Storm. Steve is also the mentor coordinator for the Butler County Vet Court. So to Steve and to all of our veterans in the audience today and to our active military, on behalf of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, I thank you for your service. As Americans, we owe a debt of gratitude to our military veterans, and our Supreme Court here in Pennsylvania is committed to doing everything we can to support the men and women who have served our country as they transition back to civilian life. As you all know, many of our veterans struggle with this readjustment. Pennsylvania has the 4th highest population of veterans in this country, over 800,000, and their struggles impact all of our communities. Approximately 17 to 20% of our young vets suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, or major depression. Yet, only half of these vets seek treatment. Others resort to self-medication with drugs and alcohol, which often leads to their involvement in our criminal justice system. 1 in 6 post-9/11 vets has a substance abuse problem. Prescription drug abuse among U.S. military personnel is unfortunately constantly on the rise. It has been estimated that 1/3 of America's homeless are veterans, and on any given night, over 23,000 veterans are unsheltered or living on the streets. The majority of these suffer from substance abuse, mental illness, or related disorders. Veterans who are homeless have a higher prevalence of criminal justice system involvement. Approximately half of all veterans experiencing homelessness who have participated in the VA homeless assistance programs are involved in the justice system. Sadly, approximately 20 veterans commit suicide every day in the United States. In 2008, after seeing more and more young vets in his drug and mental health treatment courts, Judge Robert Russell of Buffalo, New York, took action and opened the first Veterans Court in the United States. There are now over 450 Veterans Courts in the nation, serving more than 15,000 veterans. In Veterans Courts, building on the problem-solving court model, eligible veteran defendants with dependency and/or mental illness are placed on specialized criminal dockets. Veterans courts help veterans by combining treatment and personal accountability with the goal of breaking the cycle of addiction and criminal behavior. After initial screening and assessment, these veterans are offered an opportunity to participate in this voluntary program, which involves judicially supervised compliance with a treatment plan developed by veteran health care professionals. Compliance is monitored through regularly scheduled court hearings, during which participants may be sanctioned for noncompliance and rewarded for a job well done. It is important to note that Veterans Court participants look to the judge as their commanding officer, and I know the judges that are with us today will talk a little bit more about that. Veterans Courts emphasize a team-focused approach through collaboration and cooperation among judges, treatment providers, and veteran volunteer mentors. At graduation, successful participants have become stable, employed, and substance-free, and continue to receive mental health assistance through community and peer counseling groups or through the VA. And let me just say a moment about the VA and their tremendous involvement in our vet court programs. I know that some of our vet courts have the advantage of being close to a VA facility, which truly aids the vet court treatment team in providing treatment and services to our vets. And those that are not in the direct vicinity of a VA have it a little bit harder, but I know they work hard to make sure that the services are still available to all the veterans. The members of the VA, the representatives from the VA, the VJOs, and all of those who assist with our Veterans Court are a critical component to the success of all of these courts, and we owe a debt of gratitude to these individuals who really go above and beyond to participate in the vet court treatment teams and to help our vet courts who are in the criminal justice system, to help our vets who are in our vet courts in the criminal justice system. At graduation, successful participants are to be celebrated. These courts boast impressively low recidivism rates and save countless dollars by keeping our veterans out of prisons. Veterans courts truly help our vets find their way back home. In 2009, Pennsylvania's first vet court was established in Lackawanna County. Pennsylvania now has 25 veterans courts, and 14 counties provide magisterial district court diversionary programs for veterans. In 2016 and 2017, over 550 veterans participated in these programs. In 2017, we had 196 vets graduate from veterans courts throughout Pennsylvania, and in 2018, 254 veterans graduated from these courts. I can tell you from personal experience, there's nothing more gratifying than attending a veterans court graduation ceremony and seeing the transformation the program has inspired in a veteran's life. I have seen the arresting officer attend the graduation ceremony to congratulate the vet on getting his life back on track. Believe me, there is not a dry eye in the courtroom. I cannot begin to know everything these veterans and their families have been through, but I do know they have served our country honorably, they have encountered tremendous difficulties, and they have overcome difficult challenges. The fact that they have successfully completed the Veterans Court program speaks volumes. It has not been easy, but they have done it. Author J.K. Rowling said, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." I submit to you that it is never too late to rebuild a life. Personally, and on behalf of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, I thank each and every one of you for being here today to share your experiences and to learn more about Pennsylvania Veterans Courts. Thank you.
Before we begin our program, I just want to thank all of our partners in this particular program. This started out with a discussion that Corinna Wilson, our consultant, and I had probably 3.5 years ago, that this would be a terrific opportunity for the law school to serve as a forum for discussions about veterans courts. We were able to enlist Judge Trebilcock and Judge Dugan and several others. And most importantly, AOPC has the problem-solving courts, the administrators there have really provided the muscle to make this a great program. We really appreciate it. They're providing our meals today, and they've provided much of the publicity and the energy behind this program, and we're really grateful for everything that they've done. We're grateful also for our county commissioners, our district attorneys that have all been supporters. I'd like to thank in particular my assistant, Paula Hyder, and for all of the people at the law school that work behind the scenes to make all of this work. And of course, again, to the PCN for providing us with a forum to reach throughout Pennsylvania and be able to disseminate these important ideas and concepts to all those interested viewers that support veterans as well across the state. I'd now like to turn the time over to Angela Lowry. Angela is the administrator, the director for the Veterans Courts and for the part of the problem-solving courts. And we're grateful again for her and for their assistance. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Are you ready to have some fun? All right, we're going to start. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the program today. Our first panel is our judges panel. And as Justice Todd said, the judges are the glue that hold the courts together. And the judges that we have here today are some of the most humble and hardworking judges that I have the opportunity to work with. Our moderator for today is Judge Greg Trebilcock. Judge Trebilcock is a York County Court of Common Pleas judge, proudly residing over the Veterans Court. He was elected in 2011 to a term that expires in 2022. Judge Trebilcock has served as the pro bono counsel on the U.S. Supreme Court for Mr. Albert Snyder in his case against the Westboro Baptist Church. He has served as a judicial clerk for the U.S. Department of Labor Administrative Appeals judges and has worked as a prosecutor and private practice attorney for 24 years. Judge Trebilcock earned his Juris Doctor from the University of Michigan Law School in 1985. Also with us this morning is Judge Nancy Butts. Judge Butts has been the president judge for Lycoming County since 2010. She currently serves as the Lycoming County Drug Court judge and has continuously done so since its formation in 1998. She has also presided over the DUI court since 2008 and established the county's juvenile drug court and served as its judge from 2004 to 2016. She established and worked with the Lycoming County Mental Health Court from 2008 to 2012 and returned to it in 2018. And because she didn't have quite enough work to do, she currently presides over the county's Veterans Treatment Court, which she helped establish in 2018 as well. And last but certainly not least, Judge Patrick Dugan is here with us this morning, and he was elected the president judge by his peers for the municipal court in Philadelphia in 2019. Prior to being elected president judge, Judge Dugan was one of the founders of Philadelphia's Veterans Court, assigned there since its inception in 2010. In 2018, the Philadelphia Bar Association honored Judge Dugan's Veterans Court with the Henry Chikowski Award for Excellence. Please join me in welcoming our three judges for our panel this morning.
Or why don't you guys both sit on the same side? All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Judge Craig Trebilcock, and as you heard, I preside over the Veterans Court down in York. I also preside over what we call our heroin opioid wellness court as well, because that's become such a big problem nationwide. We not only have a drug court in York, we have a specialty court for heroin and opioid issues. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to speak with you this morning, along with my two friends who are also serving as judges presiding over their own veterans courts. I want to begin this morning by thanking Dean Johnson and Widener for hosting this event and keeping their focus on assisting veterans, not just by having this event, but by what they do for veterans every day. Thank Justice Todd for her ongoing focus on veterans issues. And I want to thank our military members who are present today, one for their service, but secondly for the focus of the Pennsylvania National Guard, and specifically General Corelli for his ongoing support of veterans courts. I have right now a couple of members of the Guard in my court. So it's not just people who have past service, but it can be individuals with ongoing service who benefit from the programs. So what I want to do today is I'm going to ask our judges a couple of questions that I frequently get to start things off, but then I want to leave some time for questions because that's usually the best part of the program is getting your questions. So I can gauge the level of interest in participants. Can I ask from the attendees who is either involved in having a new program, let's say in the past year, or is thinking about getting a program going by a show of hands? Okay, so we've got a few folks. And who's involved in an ongoing program that's been around for a while? Okay, so it's kind of about 50-50. All right, thank you. So I'm going to start out by asking my first question of Judge Butts. Judge, you've been doing drug court for a long time. You've been doing mental health court. Our veterans often have drug issues, and they have mental health issues. What do you see now from running a veterans court that leads you to believe that there is a need for a veteran-specific court?
Well, I think what I've learned is, maybe I should rewind back a little bit. My own personal experiences, I never served, but my father worked at the Frankfurt Arsenal for 30 years. So I was familiar with his responsibilities. When I went to law school in San Diego, California, and the professor that I worked for was the retired JAG from the U.S. Marine Corps. And for a summer, I spent at the JAG School in the Criminal Law Division in Charlottesville, Virginia. So there was a time when I was considering serving in the military. So I had gotten a sense from those experiences, the camaraderie and the whole way in which the military functioned is in that not just individuals, but individuals made up a strong group, whether it's battalion, or whatever the division was, the group of people was called. So from doing mental health court, it seems like everybody was individual, but with Veterans Court, you get a sense that it's not just the person coming in front of you, but they're also in support of the other people that they're working with. So I know we had shared this too, that I even see my approach to the participants as different in that with drug court or mental health court, I sit on the bench and I speak to the individual participants in front of me. But with Veterans Court, we run the court completely differently. I bring over a podium. I stand at the same level as the participants. We also start the proceeding by having one of the members, maybe who had a particularly good week or 2 weeks, as an acknowledgement of their success, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to start the court off. And then as they stand in front of me in parade rest, they're at the same level as I am, because I feel that I should afford them the same respect that they have earned through their service. So I just see a totally different approach that way because of that collective nature of the group. It's not so individual, I'm just here for myself, the way I see it in the other programs.
Thank you. Judge Dugan?
The issues that veterans bring into a courtroom are magnified a lot of times because of their military service. You have to think about it. Even peacetime warriors, peacetime service members, they're basically training to go to war. They're not shooting at pop-up, I don't know, how do you say geometry? Geometric figures. They're not shooting at circles or squares. They're shooting at silhouettes of human beings. So the military is training our young people to kill. To kill. So we are changing their psyche. We are changing their psyche as they go throughout their life. So whether or not they were in the Battle of Fallujah or Mosul or in the passes in Afghanistan or Vietnam, they are affected. I hear the statistics about PTSD. Hogwash. I think every human being that goes into the military is affected some way, and particularly those who go to combat, there will be some residual effects. You will be a different human being. You're a different human being after you see a fatal accident. When you pull up on a fatal accident, that is going to stay with you forever. Now magnify that being downrange and watching one of your friends being killed. And then you're there with them. Guess what? That person gets bagged up, put on a chopper, sent back stateside to Dover to their family. The people that were with them are staying. How did they go out on the next mission the next day? They're going out on the mission the next day, folks. So they will be effects. And how do we keep them going out when their backs are injured? They fall down the side of a mountain, down the cliffs, as those hills that they're walking down with a 120-pound rucksack on them. They fall down, they hurt their backs, they hurt their knees. We medicate them. I have anxiety about going back riding on top of the Humvee with my machine gun. But yesterday, my buddy got killed. How do I go back out on that mission? You just go. Some people need some medication. Sometimes it's anxiety medicine. Sometimes it's for your back. So we're over-medicating our people that we're sending out there. And then when we come home, when we're back at Fort Campbell or Fort Bragg or Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, or you show up and you get released from the reserve unit or the guard unit and you're back at home within a couple days, where do you turn to? What do you do? What's the support? You screw up, you get a DUI, you drink, you use drugs, you get in a fight. Next thing you know, you're in front of a judge. So what are we supposed to do to these people? They're coming in with a lot of problems. They are our best citizens, right? I'm speaking to the choir here, but those out there listening, right? There's only a small percentage of people who are going to do this. Raise their right hand and swear to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Just a small percentage. They're our best citizens. We have to make sure we help them become our best citizens again. Get back to doing that. So we have to pull out all stops. We have to treat them holistically. We have to give them access to the VA for the rights and benefits that they earned. We're not giving it to them. They've earned it. So we have to do it holistically. We have to treat it. The foundation was in drug treatment court. That's where vet court came out of. Judge Russell, that's what he was running. And there's 10 key components. And for most part, Veterans Court follow along with that as well. But we bring in the military aspect. And we have to continue to push forward on that. I looked at the map. Justice Todd was talking about 25 vet courts in Pennsylvania with some MDJs. That's less than 50%. We got 67 counties. Where's the other 42 counties? I'm serious. Where are you? Why aren't we doing this? It works, folks. Veterans Court works. We have the VA in the room. We have people from outside it. If a soldier or a Marine is not eligible for the VA, we have other agencies, like in Philadelphia, who have DBH who come in and help. We have a room full of veteran mentors who assist. We have 5 or 6 different VSOs, veteran service officers, that come from all these military veteran organizations who come in to help. Why aren't we doing this in every possible courtroom that we can in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania throughout the United States?
So as a justice system, when people are acting out inappropriately, what do we want to do? We want to change their thinking and behavior. So we have to have some idea how their brain works, what their value system is, how we can shift their thinking from unproductive thinking to positive thinking. You know, there's a whole bunch of terms that are used, and in treatment court settings or in other treatment provider settings, you'll hear phrases like cognitive behavior adjustment, etc., which basically means we want to change how you perceive and think about things so you conduct yourself better. Military personnel are unit animals, all right? They think in terms of the unit, not as individuals, and that's how they're significantly different. Let me ask my military friends. Hate to put you guys on the spot, but I'm going to do it. What comes first? In any military situation, what comes first? What's the priority? I knew he was going to say that, right? Because we're all programmed the same way, all right? If you've got a personal problem in the morning when you get up, your tummy doesn't feel good, or you're just feeling a little blue that day, and there's a mission that has to be accomplished, and you go to the first sergeant and tell him, I'm just not really feeling good today. What's the first sergeant going to say?
We're in the Air Force, so we might be a little different.
Where's my Army friends? My Army friends, what's Top going to say when you go to him and say, I'm feeling a little blue or my tummy hurts?
I was going to say you should have joined the Air Force.
Why don't we pick on the Air Force? Does this sound familiar? Suck it up and drive on.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So my point in bringing this up is there's really not much of a focus on the individual when you're a soldier. It's beat out of you from the time you get off that bus at basic training. That's why they strip you down, figuratively speaking, personality-wise, emotions, etc., beginning in basic. You're no longer an individual. Your individual needs don't matter. It's accomplishing the mission. It's not focusing on yourself. It's focusing on what the unit needs to accomplish. Why is that important? Because then when these folks come home from overseas and they've got the back problems and they're drinking a little too much and they're depressed and they've got anxiety, they also engage in high levels of denial. Military folks are tremendous at denial. We all have the capacity for denial. The gold medal for denial goes to military personnel because we specifically train them that way. All right? When you're downrange, there is no time or room for focusing on, my knee hurts today, I'm feeling a little blue. You have to accomplish a mission. People's lives may depend on that mission. And so when we bring them into the treatment court setting and try to get them to focus on their drinking issues, their emotional issues, you have to crack through shields that are about this thick that have been put in place through training to get them to actually admit, yeah, I've got something going on in my life. So that's one reason why they're significantly different than the folks in our other treatment courts. I run that heroin opioid wellness court. Believe me, those folks have no problem telling you how the world's unfair to them, how they've got all these problems and they just can't get out of bed in the morning because they've got this, and this going against them. In the Veterans Court, I've got these stoic guys who are sitting there looking like a recruitment poster, who've got post-traumatic stress, they're heroin addicts, they've got anger management issues, and I say, so how are things in your life going? Fine, sir. I'm like, okay. No, it's not going fine. Open up, buddy. And it takes a long time to get through that with them. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to piggyback on what the Colonel is saying. So this is Colonel Trebilcock. He's retired U.S. Army, and he's been to Iraq and Afghanistan. He was there.
Lovely places.
Yes. He was there during the invasion of Iraq. He was also over in Afghanistan a few years ago. Not too much of American footprint. He was riding around trying to assist them in their justice system. And he was also my commander when I was in, for a period of time. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understands who's standing up here, that Colonel Craig Trebilcock, retired colonel. And I'm also retired Army. I was infantry, civil affairs, and JAG. So it helps. It doesn't have to be a veteran that sits on the bench. It doesn't have to be. It has to be somebody who has some empathy and understands military, veteran, etc. If you don't have that service as a judge, surround yourself with people who do. Make sure you have mentors. Look for outside agencies that can come in and help you, because there is that military culture. As the judge said, her people are standing there at parade rest. It's amazing. It's amazing to see a defendant, when you start addressing him, all of a sudden they stand up, they're at attention, or they're parade rest, as opposed to every other courtroom that we sit in, where they're just slouching back, they can't be bothered, they have all kinds of attitude. But once we tap into their military service, you see the pride come back. And that's what we're trying to do. Get back to that person who was very proud of joining the military, of serving. And that's why this works like that. So I try to stress, as we talked about, as the Justice mentioned earlier, the team concept. It's not Judge Dugan in that court. I'm sitting up there, but I have a fantastic team. I have a great coordinator. I have folks from outside agencies, DBH. I have, we got about 10 mentors that are there steady. They served in all branches of the military. And again, all these VSOs that show up, they come in and it's a holistic type of approach that they start bonding with these veterans. It's not from 8:30 to 4:30 either, folks. As I was talking to my coordinator, she's up here in the corner, Lisa Sanders, this morning. We're in a crisis mode trying to deal with one of our new defendants that came in, and our mentor's been on the phone with him most of the night. It's all the time. The defendants that we have wind up having access to our team 24/7. So you want to make sure when you're manning these courtrooms that you're putting people who buy in, the workers. They can't just be there for a paycheck. They have to have a passion to assist our veteran defendants. Because otherwise the veterans, nah, you don't really care about me. They see through it. They know the deal.
Judge Dugan, we're talking about the county level here primarily. Court of Common Pleas, municipal courts, they're existing at the county and the city level. But what's your awareness of any initiatives going on at the state correctional level, if any?
So I went up to SCI, it was formerly known as Graterford, SCI Phoenix, for a Veterans Day event. I've been getting these invitations for years. I was finally able to clear my calendar. And I went up to the prison to talk to the veterans that are sitting in jail. The United States has a lot of military veterans who are incarcerated. And a lot of these guys up in SCI Phoenix are lifers. They served their nation. They went to Vietnam. They were peacetime soldiers. They went to Iraq. They went to the Gulf War. And when they came home, they committed a crime. They were found guilty, and now they're sitting in jail. Again, many of them are lifers. They're there for 40 years. So when I went up there and I spoke to them, it's about 150 men in this room. And I got up and I talked to them about their service and back and forth. And afterwards, and listening to some of them speak, I was taken aback about the quality of men that are behind bars, and they committed the crimes. I'm not saying anything about that. They committed the crimes. But when you peel that away and you talk to them, I tell our veterans, they're you and me. They came home and they made a rash decision, a snap of the finger. They had a gun on them and they got in an argument. They wound up killing somebody. You can't make that decision. So the defendants, the veterans that come in front of me, we go up there now. So I talked to the folks up at, after that encounter on Veterans Day, we now have a program where many of my veterans in my court, we put them in a van, we go up there to the prison. It's not a scared straight. It's peer-to-peer mentoring. We go in there, sit around a table, and my guys talk to the guys that are stuck in jail for the rest of their lives. And the commonality, they talk about the same MOS, they know somebody's uncle, they relate, they talk about their military service, and then they talk about the mistakes that they made that put them in jail. And then my guys are like, wow, I almost did that. I was carrying, but I didn't pull it out to shoot that guy that I was arguing with, but I wasn't supposed to have the gun. So it's a fantastic program that we're doing with SCI Phoenix, and I would urge others to look into that because, again, it's not the scared straight. It's just peer-to-peer mentoring. And some of the counseling that we get out of there, it's phenomenal. It really is.
Yeah. This is my so-called editorial comment. I think my perception is that's one of the weaknesses we have across the Commonwealth with trying to help the veterans is there's a gap between like state probation and parole. Not that they're not doing a good job, but at the county level, we have these veterans courts. When somebody messes up bad enough that they're up at the state correctional institution level, there's not this level of support services. And then when they get paroled out, they're not getting paroled into a veterans court program. They're just getting paroled out onto the street under state probation and parole programs that are not veteran focused necessarily. That's a problem because those folks who are up there who may not be lifers, but they may have done 10 years, they may have done 20 years, they have those same post-traumatic stress issues, they have the same substance abuse issues, they have the same memory of their buddy, dying next to them in the Gulf War that they haven't addressed. And if we don't address those issues, the amount of time before they're back in state is going to be pretty small. So there's a gap. We're doing really good at the county level. I'm not so sure we're covering the need at the state level.
Something to that?
Please.
One of the things that if you're not familiar with, individuals go to county prison or state prison because a common pleas court judge sentences them. But we only have paroling authority at the county level. So one of the reasons why, or probably what promotes that gap, is the fact that once a person goes to state prison, the county loses all the ability to manage that probation or parolee. So what happens is when you try to work, because in our drug court, we had attempted to work with the Pennsylvania Board of Probation and Parole, but their rules are different. So if we, as part of the therapeutic reaction to someone relapsing, we want to have them do more meetings or have them work more intensively with a counselor or, raise the level of their treatment. The parole board says no. Our rules say they need to go back to jail. So if it's a woman, they go to Muncie. If it's a man, they go to SCI Rockview, where I live. So that completely pulls the rug out from any treatment that a person who really needs it could have. And I think that, just for those of you that weren't aware, that really illustrates the powerlessness that we have as common pleas court judges who preside over any type of treatment court to be able to address the needs of individuals who are on state supervision because of their whole different system of accountability through the board.
In all of the treatment courts I've been involved in, it took me a while to realize this. What causes people to not be successful in the program? What causes them to fail, to flunk out of the treatment court program, to end up back in jail long term? And it's not what you might think. Yeah, there may be somebody who's just not invested in their treatment. Got that. That can happen. People are people. But when you're looking for broad themes of what causes people to fail, who want to get better, who want to not be committing criminal acts again, there's what I call the big three. And these are problems with housing, consistent, reliable housing, financial issues, lack of financial stability, and third, again, it took me a long time to appreciate this, transportation. Because we put all sorts of requirements on folks in the justice system, especially out in a county like York. We've got a urban hub, but York is largely rural. And then we say, you got to get to your urinalysis tests on a random basis. We're going to call you in a number of days per week for your urinalysis test. You got to show up to your treatment provider. Whatever counseling that may be. You got to come in and see your PO. You got to have a job. Oh, by the way, you're on a DUI, so you don't have a license. Okay? And then when they miss these appointments, we go, oh, you're a bad person, we're going to violate you. So when you're setting up a court, for those of you who are setting up a new program, and you're wondering why some of your people are not succeeding, please look at those three issues: housing, financial stability, and transportation. To address those, here's some of the things we've done in York. And don't feel the pressure for the new programs to try to do all of these at once. We've been doing the Veterans Wellness Court now for going on 7 years. We did not have all of these things in place in the first year or two. But here are some examples, and for my commissioner friends who are here, here's some things you can think about doing in your community. Just in the past year, we were able to get funding and set up a veteran housing unit in York. We stole the idea from Lancaster. They get all the credit. Lancaster has a house for veterans who are in their wellness court. We have one too. It's not limited to people who are just in the wellness court, but so far predominantly it has been. So when you put 5 or 6 guys in that one house, one, stable housing, check. Transportation becomes easier because some of the guys in the house do have a license. So they can carpool when they're called in for their urinalysis tests. Try to put the house along a place where maybe they can either get a ride from the bus, or another thing we've done, and it works sometimes and not other times, we actually bought some bikes. The sheriff's deputies maintain them, and we loan the bikes out for the duration of the program. You may not be on a bus line, but if you're within 3 to 5 miles of a bus line, you can ride your bike to the bus stop and then catch the bus. That fixed a lot of problems. In our county, I was surprised they were willing to do this, but it kind of makes sense on a fiscal basis. In York, the bus and transportation provider is called Rabbit Transit. And they are willing to, on an on-call basis, come and pick up our veterans in the court and take them to their appointments. Now, you think that might be cost prohibitive? You know, like, really? You're actually going to, for one person, come and pick them up and take them to like their urinalysis test or whatever? Think of the cost of the alternative. If they don't make it, we're going to be locking them up in jail at a cost of $100 per day. They're going to lose their job. They're not going to be contributing to the tax base. Their kids are going to be in a one-parent house or maybe a no-parent house. So their kids may be going into foster care. You start counting those costs in on it, sending a minivan or something to pick up that vet and getting them to their necessary appointments is a bargain. What else? Financial. We are providing them with financial counselors now. A lot of these guys, they may have been a PV1 or something while they were in the military. They got their check, they were deployed, whatever. Some of them haven't had a lot of practice managing money. Their bank is their front left-hand pocket where they've got a roll of bills and they just pay stuff out till it's gone, and then they start not paying on things like their probation costs and all of that. Because why? Well, because they drink a Red Bull every day, right? So that Red Bull over a month adds up, and at the end of the month, they can't pay their probation costs. So we provide them with that. We just started a program brand new. This is after 7 years, so don't feel pressure to do this. We're setting up cooking classes for them. What's a court doing providing cooking classes, right? Isn't that a little too touchy-feely? Well, we found that some of these guys, because they never learned to cook, they're blowing all their money on buying their food at Rutter's and Sheetz. They don't go to a grocery store. They don't cook meals. They don't cook a big pot of chili and then live off it all week like college students learn to do. They go to Rutter's and buy, or Sheetz, and buy all their food, you know, for every meal there at a premium price. One, it's not healthy. Two, they blow all their money. So we're trying to show them how to make their money go further. So those are just examples. What programs do you guys have?
I don't know what Rudders and Sheets are. I'm from Wawa country. So, but some of the things that with the transportation is a huge issue for us as well. We've been lucky. We've partnered up with a few nonprofits. One of them is the Multi-Service Center in Philadelphia. So when we go out to SCI Phoenix, we get a van. They'll come over and pick our guys up. So they'll take our 8 or 9 guys, put them in a van, and drive them out for the program. Another program that we go to is something called equine therapy. It's called Shamrock Reigns. It's in Pipersville, up in Bucks County. The minute you go on this property, it's a relief. I love going up there. It's phenomenal. All our veterans that go up there come back. Our staff goes up there. And it's a fantastic organization up there. The Multi-Service Center helps take our guys up there, but that organization themselves, Shamrock Reigns, will come down to Center City, Philadelphia, and pick up some of our veterans. We also, with the, I haven't thought about the SEPTA coming to do the paratransit or picking our folks up, but I'm going to ask them. We do provide them with passes at times for them to go, but that it does become an issue when we can get it. Our organizations like Department of Behavioral Health, they will help provide passes for some of our defendants, some of our veterans to get on a bus, because as you say, it's tough to get out there to the VA for treatment if you don't have money, if you don't have a vehicle.
When you live in a smaller county like I do, I live in Williamsport, which is Lycoming County, which if you, I'm going to borrow your map here, which is here in the state, which if in the end of August anybody watches Little League World Series, that's where I live. Our county is the size of the state of Rhode Island. So the majority of our county is very rural. So we don't have the luxury of having paratransit or having buses that'll be able to come pick our participants up. So with the Veterans Program, what we've tried to do is tie mentors who have driver's licenses to be able to assist the participants with being able to get where they need to go. We also received some grant funding from AOPC, and this is the type of or size of county that we live in, is that we had put in for a request to buy some bicycles so that our veterans could use them, and our county commissioners weren't very happy with that because they felt as though we were preferring people who were in the criminal justice system over regular citizens. But we argued back that they have no license, they have no transportation. So in some instances, in much smaller counties, you run into the misunderstanding of that you have to come into the criminal justice system to receive preferred treatment. No, it's just to make sure that they get the treatment that they need so that they don't go back to jail. So it does improve their quality of life. I wish we had the opportunities that I used to have when I lived in the southeastern part of the state, because I grew up in Bucks County. But when you're in a smaller rural county like we are, you try to accept volunteers who come, who served, who want to participate, and give opportunities to the participants. And it's up to your creativity. That's what we discovered with mental health court, with drug court, with DUI court. No program is identical by any means, because as you can see, there are 3 different personalities up here in the form of the judges. So all of our programs are going to resemble the judge that presides over them. But I think what makes it more challenging from my position, but also more rewarding from the judicial position, is how creative you can be and the difference you can make in the participants' lives.
All right, thank you. So at this point, let me throw it open for questions for any of us about anything. Floor is wide open. We are so good. We have covered everything exhaustively and thoroughly.
Run over a microphone.
There's one question in the middle.
Here, can you use this microphone? It's easier.
Maybe I don't want to ask now. A colleague of mine had a veteran in the county common pleas court, and they were trying to get them transferred over to the veterans court. The judge and the DA in that county refused. What's a hurdle or way to get past this what's a way or method to get past this kind of hurdle where you have the judge and DA in a common pleas court county where they're not allowing the veteran to go to a veterans court where they could get the proper treatment?
Well, I mean, really, in most counties, the DA is the initial doorkeeper. It can vary from county, but finally, the judge is the ultimate authority. If the judge says they're not coming in, they're not coming in. And there can be a number of reasons for that. It can be the nature of the offense. In York, for example, we're not going to take anybody who's got a sex offense. In some counties, and this is nationwide, county rules can vary from place to place. Some counties won't allow a gun crime in. Other counties will. In York County, we will, because we worked it out and said, these are vets. They're going to be around guns. They're familiar with guns. If we knock out gun crimes, we're going to be eliminating the people who need help the most. Now, if you shoot somebody, forget about it. You're not coming into the veterans court. You're going to be prosecuted as a felon. But, so that's one issue. The other thing we do in York, sometimes people don't fit into our program because we have a rule that you cannot be on certain drugs and be in our court. We don't allow medical marijuana in our court. That doesn't mean that they can't be helped, though, and a lot of those cases come to me. I may not put them in the formal veterans court program, but I will take their plea, put them on probation, put them in contact with the same services as the guys in my veteran court. I will not give them jail time. I will order them to go to VA and get a mental health screening and a drug and alcohol screening to follow through with that treatment. And maybe go to some of these other therapies we're talking about. So it's very, very case specific. But the short answer is if the judge says no, they're toast. They're not coming into the program.
Something?
Yes.
As part of our formulation of our program, we talked to the veterans and we decided that individuals who are dishonorably discharged or a bad conduct discharge would not be eligible for Veterans Court. So some people aren't necessarily in agreement with that who are in the public, but because Judge Russell, who was from Buffalo, his first Veterans Court was really a hybrid drug mental health court, as he describes it, and because I do preside over all the other treatment courts in our county, maybe the person can't come to Veterans Court, but we will not let them suffer for that disqualification in Veterans Court. So I do have veterans in drug court. I have veterans in mental health court. So just as Judge Strabelcock says, we'll find a way to get them into treatment. But that may be another reason why, is there may be a criteria that you don't think of that all veterans could get in, but like I said, in my county, the veterans themselves had decided that individuals that had that type of discharge wouldn't be eligible.
Sir, what year did you come on the bench?
2012.
If you go back and look at 2012 or 2011 election that this judge ran, he ran on the platform that he was bringing a veterans court to your county. So I'm not saying that's the situation in your county, but as people are running for elected offices, whether they're DAs or judges, I don't think there's anything wrong with them having that platform that perhaps when they get there, they can promise. But I do agree it is case specific. There are some times that I turn down people, other people might say, no, they should be in veterans court, and for whatever reason, I say no, whether it's the nature of the offense, the victim who doesn't want it. And as the judge said, we have 3 different programs here. I take whatever discharge they have, and I look at it individually. Sure, on its face, I'm not taking that bad conduct discharge, but then I look at it, wait a minute. This Marine was in the Battle of Fallujah. And then when he got back to Fort Campbell, he did some pretty bad things. But I'm looking at him, what was he before that? So we're willing to work with him. It gets very difficult dealing with the VA, et cetera. That's why we have these other agencies that come in. So it's case specific. And yeah, sometimes it's people with certain discharges that at some point I say, never mind. But I do look at it individually. And the other thing is, Veterans Court is not an easy program to get through. If you're in my court for 18 months, it'd have been much easier if you'd have just taken 18 months straight probation outside of Veterans Court. Because if you're in Veterans Court, you're coming to see me all the time. You're going to 3 or 4 different places. I'm getting reports. I'm going to hammer you if you screw up. I'm going to give you a trinket if you do well. But it's a hard program to get through. So for all those people out there who don't believe in it, think we're giving them a break, we're not. The veterans that graduate from Veterans Court, they've earned it. And it's much harder, a much harder program than typical probation.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any people who are post-conviction in your Veterans Court? So we've just started doing that in Chester County. I'm the judge in Chester County's Veterans Court, and we've just started taking people who the DA would not approve, but who we think will really benefit from Veterans Court. And if you do that, what do you give them as an incentive? Because it would be much easier to be on regular probation.
Different counties have different models. My court is all post-conviction. They have to plead guilty to get into the court. Then we don't sentence. And if they complete the court, their felonies get reduced to misdemeanors. All misdemeanors and summaries get dismissed. And then at the beginning of the program, I was butting heads with the prosecutor too, because they're nervous, because DAs get reelected more often than we do. So they're like, they create this fantasy in their mind of, I'm going to let somebody in there and they're going to go have a hostage situation and I'm going to lose my job. That's how the DA's mind works initially. After the court runs for a while, they calm down. So I created what I called Track 2. I just created it. And Track 2 was, even if the DA vetoes them coming into the court, I will use my authority as judge to sentence them to Veterans Court. And I'm going to do the same thing anyway as if the DA had approved it. So the one thing they can't get there, though, is I can't give them the sentence reduction because the DA hadn't agreed to it. But we've also done this. By the time the DA calms down and sees that the Veterans Court's going to work and the guy's gone through 18 months of my program, at the end, the DA says, yeah, we can reduce his charge, even if he was in Track 2. So it works out. So I kind of decided early on, I'm not going to fight the DA, I'm just going to outflank him, and it worked.
In our county, we're all post-conviction also, and we have 2 tracks, but it's slightly different. We don't have any charge reduction at all in our county. So what happens is we might take somebody on and they don't get jail time, and that's usually the incentive that encourages people to take the program. We might, if there's a mandatory sentence, like for a DUI, we'll put them on an electronic monitoring system so then they can do their incarceration at home. So that's the benefit for those individuals where the district attorney approves. If the DA doesn't approve, then what we do is we offer them what we call a sentencing letter, which is you go in front of another common pleas court judge in our county and you ask them for a county sentence. And you give them this letter and says, if you give me county, I will do Veterans Court, or I will do treatment court. And then that judge can make that decision. And the DA's arguing for state prison, but if the DA doesn't get what they want and the judge sentences them to county, and especially county IP, then we will take them. And usually once the judge does that, they'll even let me have full reign as to what type of sentence they have. So let's say the judge gave them 36 months IP, first 6 months in the pre-release center. The judge will put in the order, and Judge Butts can modify this order in any way she sees fit, which is usually either converting it to EM or even releasing them early, as long as they continue to successfully comply with the requirements of the program. So there are 2 different sort of tracks, but they're all treated the same way.
All right, I'm about to spill over into the county commissioner time, and since they provide all the money to run the courts in the
you've got one
county,
more question.
I'm not going to do that. Oh, okay. One more? Okay.
I was just going to jump in defense of prosecutors
Right.
and say, we have a very liberal court in Allegheny County, but there are 2 procedures to come in. The first is protocols that were agreed to by all the parties to the court. And you know, that's the court, probation, the DA, defense, everybody. We try to follow those rules in bringing people in. So it's not necessarily that we fantasize somebody might do something horrible. We're trying to treat everybody equally in bringing them into the court. We do make a lot of charge reductions in making those plea offers. But one of the things that my office is particularly cognizant of is the fact that victims also have rights. And when you bring these cases into the courts, we have a rule that they must agree. We do not like to subvert that by transferring something in after the plea has taken place. That being said, the judge does have the right, if an appropriate case in their mind is to come into that court, to do the probation transfer. But the one thing that I like to remind our judges of is when that is done, the burden is on them if something goes bad. When something comes in on the front end, we are all sharing the responsibility of that decision. Nobody wants to see anybody in these courts go off or go bad. And thank God we've had very few incidents, but we're generally pretty liberal, whether the judge brings it in afterwards or we bring it in on the front end, in trying to make sure that everybody is doing the appropriate thing and the equal thing for everybody.
Pittsburgh has a reputation as an awesome veterans court all across the state and across the country. And that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought it up. And it kind of goes back to the first question I had. We all want to help veterans, but we have to balance it with the justice issues. In my court, as long as the victim is being reasonable, they're not just being vindictive or something, somebody doesn't come into the vet's court unless the victim and the cop agrees. And usually the victim is a family member, and the family member wants the perp to get better more than anyone. So they're usually in agreement. And that butting heads I described at the beginning, that was in the first year, 7 years ago, where it was all new and everybody was all really nervous about this new program. The past 6 years of our program, we've never had one disagreement with the DA and the judge about what comes in or what doesn't come in. It took just some education on both sides about, for example, the fact that, to give this example, which is classic, a lot of our vets get hit in convoys overseas. So if they're being tailgated on I-83, they're reacting like they're in a convoy in Iraq, not like they're on I-83. So they may brandish a weapon. Totally inappropriate, right? But in their mind, they're like, I'm on the highway in Iraq. That's the person we want in the court, not the person we don't want in the court. And that was part of the education process when we went through in our county. We got a fantastic DA now, and we don't have any disagreements anymore because everybody gets what's going on. He is. So you know it's quality. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge Dugan. Thank you, Judge Butts.
All right, thank you again to our three judges. I thought this panel was really good. It was a lot of really good conversation. And for those of you interested in starting courts, I hope that this has got the wheels turning and you can see me afterwards and we can talk about next steps from here. Our next panel is our county commissioners, and as many of you know, oftentimes our county commissioners are the ones that hold the purse strings. So we love our county commissioners that support our treatment courts, and today the county commissioners that support our veterans treatment courts. The moderator for this panel is Ken Kroski, and Ken is the County Commissioner Association of Pennsylvania's Director of Media and Public Relations. His background includes working for Baltimore County Public Schools in administration, communications and training roles, and with the city of Phoenix, Arizona as its water, sewer, and stormwater public information officer. Ken has performed and coordinated thousands of media interviews, created complex community programs, and directed crisis communications efforts. His experience also includes issues in project management, publications, branding, public outreach, customer service, and regulatory programs. And he has written, produced, and hosted dozens of videos, as well as hosted television and radio talk shows. Ken has also been a featured guest speaker at numerous statewide and nationwide conferences on topics such as working with the media and strategic communications. If you'll please join me in welcoming Ken Kroski, please.
Wow, it almost sounds like I know what I'm doing. That's great. Thank you very much to Widener. Thank you, everyone, for being here at this very important day of collaboration and learning. Counties perform so many tasks for their residents each and every day, and veterans' tasks are very important to us. I do want to note that several years ago, PCN-TV and CCAP, County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, we do historic county courthouses videos every year. And several years ago, Nancy was on the Lycoming video, and I'll tell you what, she was sharp as a tack with presenting what the courthouse and the county was all about. So it's very nice to see you again, Nancy. Okay. I get the easy part. I get to ask questions. We kind of ask you if you have questions during the panel discussion to please go ahead and ask. We won't wait until the end. So raise your hand so we can jog the microphone over there to you. And again, I'll be asking some questions to get us started and get the ball rolling. But first, I'd like you to learn a little bit about our commissioners. So I will ask them each to go ahead and introduce themselves and talk about their experience. I'll start way on your left with Dauphin County Commissioner Jeff Haste.
Good morning. As he said, my name is Jeff Haste. I live here in Lower Paxton Township in Dauphin County. And although I'm not a veteran, I am the son of a veteran and the father of a veteran. I attempted to join the service during Desert Storm, enlisted, but was not able to get in. I had 4 dependents, and at the time you could only have 2. And I couldn't figure out which 2 to get rid of to get in, so I was not able to make it. But I graduated. I was actually born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Grew up on a small farm out in southern Ohio. Graduated from Lewistown High School, then graduated from Shippensburg University. Was a private investigator right out of college in Philadelphia, so I do know Wawas. And moved here in '82 and have been here ever since. The father of 4, the husband of 1, and grandfather of 3.
Okay, very good. And next to Jeff, excuse me, is Lancaster County Commissioner Josh Parsons.
Morning, I'm Josh Parsons from Lancaster County, Commissioner since 2016, so just finishing up my first term. I was an Army infantry officer and then went to law school, not here, but down the road at Dickinson. And so when we formed Veterans Court we started talking about in 2010 in Lancaster County. I was a prosecutor in the DA's office at the time, and I was the prosecutor assigned. And then we had a defense attorney who assigned, who was a former Marine officer. And then our president judge at the time was a Vietnam vet. So we were the ones that sort of formulated it in 2010. It finally got off the ground in 2012. And I've had some interaction with it since.
And to your right, Carbon County Commissioner Wayne Notstein, who is got his arm in a sling from rotator cuff surgery, I believe. So if you have to shake its hand, it's going to have to be left-handed.
Believe me when I say those that have had a rotator cuff surgery, it's true what they say, it hurts. So you're sore for quite a while. I've been a commissioner, my 20th year here now. I serve as vice chair of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. I am an Air Force veteran, and I must say one thing about not only the Air Force, but they too get killed in action. They are POWs, they are MIAs, just like all the other branches, and we all have our different missions and work together when it comes down to it. Been a long time till we got our vet court. We only in the 2nd year, but married, 4 children, 9 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. So 6 of them are under the age of 6 and under, so it's time-consuming. But thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I would strongly encourage those in particular that are thinking about doing a drug court. Let us know. I know Carbon County is willing to step up to the plate and help you. Our president, or our judge, Matika, who handles the Veterans Court, and our adult probation officer, Rick Parson, who is a coordinator. We're all willing to step forward and help you, as well as the rest of the Veterans Court team, and the members of the team are there to support you, and we'll lend you any hand we can possibly give you in getting started and tell you how we operate. So.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Okay, question number 1, again, just to get the ball rolling. As county leaders, what made you decide to support the creation of a Veterans Court in your community?
Yeah. Well, again, we had discussions with our president judge, I want to say it's probably in 08 or 09. We were in the middle of a number of specialty courts. We were starting drug court, we were starting mental health court. The conversations, and somebody had mentioned in the previous panel about Allegheny County's Veterans Court. We had heard about their Veterans Court. We actually sent a team out to take a look at it. The other 2 courts, specialty courts, took off first, and part of that was the courts didn't really want to tackle all 3 at the same time. It was It was specialty courts were becoming the new thing to do, and they wanted to take a look at it. But there was an interest, and we had a judge, Judge Bruce Bratton, who has since retired, was a Vietnam vet, and he felt the need to make sure that it happened. So we worked very closely with Judge Bratton, got it up and running. The district attorney and the PD's office actually were ready to go earlier. And again, it was a matter of finding the right timing and the right person to lead it. The courts, as I said, they were busy with other specialty courts, and so what really made it happen for us in 2013 was having that judge who made it a passion. Judge Bratton is very active with the Vietnam Vets Association in Dauphin County. He's close social friends with a number of his buddies, and he saw firsthand the real need to make it happen. And he's the true advocate of our Veterans Court here in Dauphin County.
I would say for us, we had a number of specialty courts already. We had a mental health court. We had a drug court for a long time. That was the first specialty court we had. We had something called job court, which has since gone away. That was sort of odd, and we can talk about that. And then our present judge at the time, Judge Maddensbacher, was a Vietnam vet. So he sort of decided he wanted it, and he was the one that carried the water. I heard the gentleman's question from the last panel here. You know, I think if you have people opposed to it, you really need someone to carry the water and someone to sort of lead the effort. But it also takes a team, too. I don't think we really had any opposition or any significant opposition to it. So, you know, I'd be interested to hear other people's thoughts from other counties, but it took off pretty quickly from there.
In Carbon County, a little bit different. We're a smaller county. It was difficult trying to convince all the stakeholders that a court, a drug court or a vet court could be successful. And we decided to go the route first with the vet court. We felt it was a smaller court. It'd be easier to get up and get going, which it was. And with a population of over 6,000 veterans in Carbon County, about 10% and over 2,000 cases in the criminal system, over 200 of them were veterans. So we wanted to do something, and we felt that it was extremely important. And what helped us get off the program off the ground, we had a volunteer group that was going into the prison, counseling our inmates, et cetera, and they came to the prison board, asked for a needs assessment or the ability to do a study in a prison and make recommendations, and they did that. They did a presentation to the prison board and then to the PJ, President Judge Nanovic, and he jumped on board right away. And our Judge Matika, who is not a veteran, has done a fantastic job of running that vet court, and it takes, like Joshua just said, it takes a whole team of people of 12 to 15 members at a weekly meeting going over each case and doing whatever they can for our veterans.
Gentlemen, how long did it take you from start to finish, to implement the court? And did you have any major obstacles?
We probably, from first discussion to the time it was open, 2 years maybe. We really had little opposition to it. If there was an obstacle, the obstacle really was trying to find the mentors that go along with the court. As Josh has said, it takes a team to make these things work, and it's not just the court, it's not just the DA and the PD's office, you know, it's probation, and then to really make it successful, at least in our county, we wanted to make sure the VA was on board, our Veterans Administration Office was on board, because they could help with a number of things, particularly trying to find the information to verify that someone is in fact a veteran, which continues at times to still be a problem. But getting the mentors. So we reached out to our different veterans organizations within the county. We also reached out to Masonic organizations, Lions clubs who may have veterans involved, to try to get folks who would be willing to come forward and be mentors. As you know, veterans are proud individuals. They don't always like to share their information. They aren't individuals who normally look for help from the government. So a lot of what we were wanting to do didn't always fit what they wanted. And so the mentor we have found it to be extremely helpful in the success of our courts, because that way the individual can talk the same language, the same concerns with someone that has maybe had similar situations. And the veteran-to-veteran contact is really what has helped us make our court successful. And so those mentors, I can't emphasize the importance of the mentors in this process. And then we had to get them trained and have them understand the court procedures, everything like that as well. So it's not an obstacle. That was just a part of the process we had to do to make our court successful.
We started talking about it in 2010, mid-2010, and it launched, I think, January of 2012, so about a year and a half of meetings and working to get it set up. I think one of the biggest challenges when we were talking about forming it was, was there going to be enough business for it, frankly? Lancaster County is a big county. We're 550,000 citizens, but we don't have a military base, really. We don't, we have, a fair amount of veterans, but most of our veterans are older, World War II generation, although we're losing, a lot of them every day, Vietnam generation. We don't have a whole lot of young veterans, and there was concern, if we limit this just to people who are committing crimes where there is a nexus to their service, meaning, they came back from Afghanistan or Iraq, they saw sustained combat, and the crime they're committing is because of that, because they were using violence every day there, and then they have a hard time turning that off, which happens for some folks. But if we limit that to those guys, we're not going to have those guys and women. We're not going to have enough business for this court. So we made a decision that it was going to be for any veteran, essentially, because you've served your country, you're going to have this chance to do that. So it makes an interesting mix, because you may have, the Vietnam vet who was, on a destroyer who, didn't really see any combat, and then you have someone, who just came back from Afghanistan. So I think that was a challenge to work out, and it's worked. It's worked in Lancaster County, and we're proud of it, but, that was sort of a challenge to work out. So if I'm sure we have a lot of expertise in this audience. I'm interested to hear, your experience and what you all have done.
Yeah, for Carbon, it took us about 4.5 years to convince all the stakeholders that it would be cost effective, or because of the expense of it and the time involved and all the personnel involved in doing a drug court. And if it wouldn't be for a grant that we received, we would have never got it off the ground. And that came from the AOPC, and that helped give us the boost to get it started. The biggest thing was the financial, convincing the people. We're in our second year. We had 2 graduations already. We're going to be at the end of the second year, December. We had graduation December for 3. We had one in June for 3. We're hopefully on target for at least 2, maybe 3 this year yet. So out of the 18 that got into the program, only 2 were eliminated from the program for failure to follow procedures and policy and things of that nature. We had at least one person transfer out to another county who had a vet court because of family members being there and that. So we still have 10 members in the program. So they are doing, and what I'd like to point out at this time, it seems like the ladies in the program, the females, had the biggest problem of adapting and keeping clean, et cetera, because being children, and we talked about, the judge talked about housing and everything, and a lot of these families, or not only the women, but the men, had to go back into an environment where the spouses, the parents of other people were doing the alcohol, they're doing the drugs. So that has been one of our struggles too. So.
Thank you, Wayne. To piggyback on Wayne's comment, can we talk about funding a little bit? Number one, where do counties get their funding in general? And number two, how did funding of the court take place? Were there any processes that you want to note?
Actually,
You don't always have to start.
Okay.
You can. I don't always feel like you have to.
We really haven't had to change our budget much at all. It's just part of our court budget. It's part of our drug and alcohol, mental health budgets. It's part of everyone else's budget. To be honest with you, we've seen a cost savings in that some of the services that are provided, which wouldn't normally have done with county dollars through our human services, are actually now covered by the VA. And because of that relationship we have with the VA, some of the funding, some of the social services and some of the work that needs to be done is funded through the VA, which frees up other dollars that can go back into our budget to help other individuals in our county. One unique thing that has come up is because of where we're located and some of our neighboring counties, smaller counties don't have it, we do see the request and the need to have, and some have occurred, where outside of the county folks have come into our county Veterans Court system, and that always, because of the purse strings and the way the state funding goes, sometimes that causes us to get creative. But we really have had no funding issues at all. In fact, as I said, we've seen some dollars freed up that we could use elsewhere because of the involvement of the VA.
We're the same as Jeff. We don't have a separate budget line, really. It's just the cost is really, I consider it sort of an opportunity cost, because you have a team, including a team of people from adult probation and parole, who, if they weren't in a specialty court, they would be carrying a regular caseload, so they'd be seeing a lot more clients. So there is a cost to it in that sense, but we're not, I can't point to an exact cost for how much it is, which I think is a worthwhile discussion to have anytime you're talking about setting up a specialty court, because sometimes when we set these up, it's like people say, well, if you have, one person remain clean, it's worth it. Or if you have one person who, doesn't, fall back into recidivism again, it's worth it. And that's not necessarily the case, because if those resources, that team were working on a bigger group and serving more people and able to do that more widely, then you're potentially getting a better return on your dollar. So I think that it is important for us, especially for the commissioners, to monitor this and say, are we getting the return we expected? I think in our case we are. I think we are cutting down on recidivism. We are dealing with people who otherwise probably wouldn't have had the same chance. And at the end, we all want people to not come back into the system. That's the goal of the system. When I was a prosecutor, we were very focused on the process and on the sentences we were giving, but you also have to be focused on the end result, which is, that's something we can all agree on wherever you are on the spectrum of tough on crime. We all don't want people to come back, and I would say our Veterans Court has delivered on that.
We have been struggling with the budget being a rural county because some of the issues that were talked about earlier today. Transportation is a huge issue for us, where we'll have one taxi in the county, one or two Uber drivers we've been unable to use, but we actually contracted with one of the tourist resorts that had a van, and they are providing the service for a particular area of the county and bringing the people in. But even that gets rather expensive. We probably hired at least 3 or 4 additional staff members in the adult probation office in particular to not only the vet court, but now we got started on the drug treatment court this year. And that program is maxed out with about 30 participants right now. So yeah, it's a huge increase for us. And what we're looking at in trying to maintain the budget, we're looking at partnering with 501c3 organization that might be able to leverage some grants or funding through community foundations, et cetera, that cannot contribute to a county government. But if we can get a 501c3 as a pass-through to help us provide some of the some more programs and transportation, et cetera.
Okay, let's switch sides a little bit now. Tell us a little bit about working with the president judge, not only to get the program off the ground, but to continue it. Wayne?
Didn't take long after the presentation was presented from that core committee that did the study at the prison. They met with the president judge for maybe about an hour, and he was on board immediately. So it was not a problem, continues to support the program now.
At the time, as I said, our president judge was the one really bringing the idea to everyone. So it was, there was no real opposition.
Ours is the same. We've had no difficulty working with the president judge at all. In fact, our president judge is sort of taking it up a step. There's something called a prison board in each county, and we actually make a report of how our specialty courts are doing at prison board, so everybody within the prison board and the prison system understands the success that we're having there as well. So it's been a very good working relationship.
Are there any obstacles or problems that kind of present themselves that you have to work through on a regular basis, Wayne?
Transportation, I would say, is one of the big ones. Vendors has been another issue for us, getting sufficient vendors. Judge Matika, and by the way, none of our judges are veterans, but they all stepped up to the plate. But vendors is a big program. Our team put together a brochure. Judge Matika and Rick Parsons, our adult probation coordinator for the program, they go out on a regular basis to veterans organizations or any other group to try to promote it. Anytime I have the opportunity to bring up a veterans court, I always encourage the people that I talk to, you have to go and sit in on at least one session because it is totally different from a traditional criminal court. And the way it's handled by the Judge Matika, we start off with the Pledge of Allegiance when the judge comes in. We have all the flags from the different branches of the military in the courtroom, and it's really a relaxed, and we try to make our participants fully comfortable and reiterate every week and in the courtroom as well, not only in the meeting before the court, how we are there to help you if you need help, whether it be mental health, drug and alcohol, housing, jobs. We have people from the Workforce Opportunities Act who represent Veterans Affairs and trying to get jobs for these people.
I would agree with my colleagues that the mentors are really important, probably the most important part. And we've been really blessed in Lancaster County with a lot of mentors who've come forward, and just think that's huge. So I wouldn't say really that's been an obstacle for us. I think they found as they got further into it that housing was a challenge for a lot of folks who are going through it. And one thing I think is fairly unique with Lancaster County is that Veterans Court partnered with a nonprofit, Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership. They actually bought a blighted property, turned it into what they call the Lancaster Barracks, which is for people who are going through the Veterans Court process. I think it cost something like $120,000. They raised that through a nonprofit. So now if the people going through the process don't have housing, they have an opportunity to stay there. So that's kind of interesting and unique way to get through that challenge.
I would say the mentors is an ongoing issue. You're just trying to make sure we constantly are recruiting mentors and then sort of educating them to the court process so that they are doing what's asked of them of the courts. But probably our biggest ongoing issue is really just the verification. It seems to slow the process down at times, verifying the veteran's status, getting the proper paperwork that the courts want. Everybody thinks that the DD2s are in that particular courthouse. Many times they are not. They're somewhere else or not filed or whatever the process is. And that seems to be the slowdown in the process. So if we could find a way to improve that, that would help. But for the most part, the court system is going very well. As Josh said, I can't say it's a formal partnership, but we do have like two nonprofit agencies that come off the top of my head that we work with for housing that specialize in veterans residents. So that helps at times.
Does your county market the Veterans Program in any way? And do you think the public understands in general what it's about? Josh?
There's been a lot of press coverage of it over the years. There's been I would say, a significant interest in it. So I would think within certain parts of the community, there's knowledge, and certainly throughout the criminal justice community, there's knowledge about it. So, all the defense attorneys know about it, and if they have someone they think's appropriate, then, they'll bring that person forward. So, yeah, I would say there's pretty widely diffused knowledge of it.
Yeah, we talk about it on our county website. Our district attorneys are constantly looking for the appropriate candidate to put in there, as well as our PD and our probation office. Our staff are also very good at going out and speaking to veterans groups, the district attorney and the public defender in particular, to talk about the program with veterans groups. And then we also, as a county, I think we do it 2, maybe 3 times a year, have a veterans breakfast where we go to a different part of the county. We invite the veterans associations. We have the VA. We have a person from the Federal Veterans Agency come in as well. And we talk about all the veterans issues. We started a program because of the ID issue. We started a program where our recorder of deeds, Jim Zuge, goes out and he's able to verify, and he actually gives our veterans then a veterans ID card. And we've done that not only because of this, but we've gone out to our businesses, and businesses will offer discounts to veterans. Some veterans sometimes don't have an ID card that says, if you're not in the VA system, if you're in the VA system, you get the VA card, but other than that, they don't have an ID card. So our recorder of deeds actually issues now a ID card, and we'll actually process those at these breakfasts. So again, I think those who need to know about it. The general public, I think they're somewhat aware of it, but those who really need to know, I think, are aware of the system and how it works.
Wayne, anything?
Yeah, our local media also has been really good to us as far as the Veterans Court and getting the programs out there in advertising and positive stories on the nightly news as well as in the newsprint. And again, it's important that and great that our president, judge, and them get out to all these organizations and push for vendors, mentors, and other support for the program.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Do you have any examples of the positive stories or veterans that have come back to you and that have been impacted positively by this? Wayne?
In one of the graduations, our first graduation, I think it was, where one of the participants graduating said, Veterans Court saved their life. It's a positive thing when, it makes you feel good. In my opinion, that when someone makes that statement, we saved a life, because you could never put the value on a life saved.
Good, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of anecdotes about people, just very, very positive about the experience. And I think, we've had even a county employee who went through the process because they had a criminal issue and was able to continue working. We had, I think we've had veterans who've gone through, had subsequent interest in being mentors. So I think overall, if they make it through, it's a very positive experience. And I think the reason for that is, it reminds them of who they are and who they were as a veteran. When you're in the military, it's about something bigger than yourself. And sometimes when you get out, you get disconnected from that. And, I think this, going through this process, being with the mentors, and also, just what they do in the courtroom and having all the flags reminds you, of who you are, that you are about something bigger than yourself, and helps people, get back on track. So I think that's part of the real value of this.
Jeff?
Yeah, actually, as you were saying, I was thinking about a conversation I had with a young man. It was actually pretty heartbreaking, but he'd served in Afghanistan, been hit with an IED, had multiple injuries, multiple surgeries, came back and was, an alcoholic, and had gone through a number of treatment facilities, tried to deal with a number of counselors. And what he talked to me, a lot of the treatment facilities are drug-oriented, not alcohol-oriented. A lot of them were younger folks who did not go through the same things that a military person goes through. And he had a very difficult time relating to anybody in any of the systems. Failed 3 counseling or 3 treatment facilities. Had gone to them, relapsed in all 3 cases. He actually thought that there was no hope and was really sort of about ready to give up. But got involved in the Veterans Court, found a mentor who had been through a similar problem 20 years ago, or probably more. It was a Vietnam veteran who, again, had an alcohol problem, not a drug problem. And that person was actually able to have his church save him. It was someone in his church. This individual was not a churchgoer, but was able to make that connection with this person and was able to turn around. And as best as I know, it's been about 3 years, totally clean, totally sober, and productive. The young man now has gotten married, and I think is off to a very good start. But this was a person that had he not gone through this, I think he was ready to give up, so.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any things that you think could be enhanced to make the process or the results better after several years on this side with your counties and Wayne, even with you just starting? Anything present itself as being needed to make things even better? Josh?
That's a good question. I think we're in a pretty good place. Nothing really jumps out at me. We'll always welcome funding if somebody wants to provide more funding to us from the state or elsewhere. But overall, I think we're in a pretty good place. We're pretty blessed with the mentors, as I said. We have a lot of people who want to serve in that way, but we're always looking for more of those too.
Actually, ours is going fairly well as well. 2 areas we could probably improve. I just think we could always improve. Again, I'll go back to this on the upfront side of trying to verify the veteran status and that. And then I would say probably the other area is just trying to get the funding streams to understand, and I'm sure Josh has some of this too, being a larger county in a part of the state where other counties don't have it, the need for those veterans in other counties to come into ours, and just the strings that are tied to some of those funding, and how it's not always that easy to go across those imaginary political subdivision lines called county lines to get the treatment. Sometimes if that could ease up, that might help as well. But we have gotten creative and worked our way around it. It's just that could be improved.
I think sustainable funding in the future, getting the grants up front is great, but what happens when they go away? So I think we need to ensure that our legislators are aware that, the programs are successful beyond a doubt, and sustainable funding is very important, as well as additional facilities. One of our biggest problems was mental health and the available beds. At one time, there was a 1-year waiting list, 1 year, until we can get a person out of our correctional facility or out of our prison into a bed. And that is totally unacceptable. And that came about, I'd say, because of a closing of a facility in the Lehigh Valley area, and it created a hardship for all the counties, really.
Josh, if you had one message to give a veteran before they get involved in a veterans court, what do you think it would be?
So somebody who, is entangled in the criminal justice system, and you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, probably the message that I just relayed, that, I think this reconnects you with the veterans community, with the, with who you were, with being something bigger than yourself. I think a lot of people, well, probably pretty much all of us, no matter how you served, when you get out, you feel a little bit of that loss of connection. You feel a little bit of that loss of team, that loss of mission, and you have to find your new mission. And everybody handles that differently. And some people, and everybody had different experiences too. So some people have more trouble with that. Some people fall into things they wouldn't have otherwise fallen into or didn't expect to fall into. So I think Veterans Court done well reminds you of who you were and the best, and the people that you served with. And I think everybody who gets out, you might not miss everything about your service, or you might not miss a lot, but you do miss the people. And this helps reconnect you with the people.
Jeff, anything on your part?
I just sort of tag on to what Josh, I think it does help people get reconnected, but I think, and I was thinking back to something was said in the previous panel, the Veterans Court's not easy. None of the specialty courts are easy. Sometimes it's easier for someone to just do the time and sit and let it go. However, for those who really want to change their life, especially for the veterans have been through a lot of tough things. And I think they are probably as prepared, if not more prepared than anybody else, as long as they make that connection, that focus. Once they do that, they realize it's back to the team. They're not doing it alone. Their mentor is there. They have the courts, they have the DA and the PD who understand what they want and want them to succeed. So if the person truly wants to turn around and is looking forward to having that team approach to get there, this is the way to go. And understand it's not easier than the other way, but it is a whole lot more successful. Numbers will show that this is more successful than the other way.
Wayne, any advice?
I think for these people, maybe encourage them to go to a graduation, because as someone said earlier, you know, there was not a dry eye in the house. And especially in this last graduation, we had a speaker that brought just about everyone in the room to tears, hearing their story, what they went through. And I think if we can encourage them to a graduation or even go to a drug court session, see what it's about, talk to one of the graduates, try to get a feel for what it's all about. I think we have to educate them that we are there for them, no matter what the issue may be. They're there for them.
Yeah, great thoughts, gentlemen. Thank you. Any questions from our attendees? Any thoughts, ideas, concerns? Yes, sir. The microphone is making its way over to you. Get your steps in today, right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Commissioner Hayes, you talked about crossing jurisdictional lines coming from other counties, and I'm curious how funding, how that happens when you're looking at probation, whether it's behavioral health treatment services, transportation. If you have defendants coming from other counties, where does the responsibility and funding fall?
Well, that's part of what has to get figured out. But in our case, what happens, it's usually someone that has multiple charges in multiple counties. And our staff have been good at working relationships out with the other counties to where they agree to pay their share. It's not really a well-defined thing, but it's a negotiation between our staff and the other county staff. And because we've done it with other programs, that relationship is there and it's easier to get done. I don't know that we've ever had a situation where it kept the individual from going through. It just, again, makes it a little more complicated.
Hey, anyone else? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you. What would any of you gentlemen say to a fellow county commissioner who maybe wasn't necessarily against the idea, but perhaps just indifferent to the idea of something new, especially in a world where county budgets sometimes are a zero-sum game?
Well, I think, one, I'd say that, you know, it's been effective. Two, I'd say that, you know, personally, I believe we owe a certain debt to those people who have agreed to serve their country. And this is, you know, this is part of that, our county contribution to that. But three, I mean, you know, again, I'll go back to the fact that wherever you are on the criminal justice system, none of us want people coming back. And I mean, that is the biggest idea behind this, is that, you know, we get a hold of people so that, and work them through a program so that they don't come back.
I would just add, In our specialty courts, we have seen a better recidivism rate. We don't see those folks coming back, so the success rate is better. But from a county commissioner standpoint, really looking at the budget, the other thing to keep in mind is you have a new funding partner when you do this. It's the VA. And if you develop a good working relationship with them, there are programs that they pick up that if you weren't going through this way and you didn't make that connection, the county would be picking up. And so it's actually a benefit to do this, and you have a new funding partner in the process.
Okay, anyone else? Well, thank you very much. Again, we appreciate you having us here, and we'll stick around for a few minutes if you have any questions on the side. Okay, take care. Thank you.
All right, thank you again to Ken Krosky and our county commissioners, and I think they had, again, a lot of really great things to say. I am going to hand things over to my colleague, Andy Simpson, who is a Judicial Programs Administrator with the AOPC. Thank you.
Good morning. It's with great pleasure to introduce our next group of panelists who have dedicated their careers and lives to serving justice-involved veterans across Pennsylvania in counties with veterans courts and also in counties without veterans courts. Here to tell us more about the VA's Veteran Justice Outreach, or many of us say VJO programs, are Bill Kress, who will serve as our moderator today. Bill is a licensed social worker beginning his career at the VA in 2007 and currently serves as the VISN 4 Network Homeless Coordinator at the Pittsburgh VA Medical Center, overseeing VJO programs across 9 VA medical centers across Pennsylvania, Delaware, Ohio, West Virginia, New York, and also New Jersey. Bill will moderate today's panel. Our VJO panelists today, to my right, your left, we have Christina Beaver, a licensed social worker who currently serves as a Veteran Justice Outreach Coordinator at the Butler VA Medical Center in Western PA. Next, we have Karen Baer, who is a licensed social worker serving at the as a Veteran Justice Outreach Specialist at the Wilkes-Barre VA Medical Center in Northeast Pennsylvania. And to my left here, we have Jalou Negre, a licensed social worker and Marine Corps veteran who currently serves as a Veteran Justice Outreach Specialist at the Lebanon VA Medical Center in Central Pennsylvania. Join me in welcoming our distinguished panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. First off, I wanted to thank Widener for having us here, and I also wanted to thank Angela and Andy and their team. We found a really good partner with them. It's nice to have somebody at their level that we can call and bounce ideas off of and talk about our existing courts and, you know, what's working and what's not working. And right now, you know, we're looking at what our challenges are moving into the future and working with them and how we can solve some of those challenges. Earlier in my introduction, you had heard him say that I'm with the VISN office, VISN 4 office. So I wanted to give a little bit of a background or a breakup of what my job and my role actually is. So there's 170 VA medical centers across the country. And there is, excuse me, I'm getting a little nervous here for some reason. Take a breath. So there's 170 VA medical centers across the country. And they are actually divided up amongst networks or VISNs, Veterans Integrated Service Networks. And so there's 18 of those VISNs, and we here are at VISN 4. So with that being said, earlier in the introduction, they had mentioned there's 9 VA medical centers within that area. And along with the VA system, there is VISN leads for various VA programs, such as just about any kind of VA program, there's a lead. So whether it's prosthetics or nursing or logistics, I happen to be the homeless lead, And VJO actually falls under the homeless program. And as you had heard earlier, Justice Todd was mentioning that, you know, there's a really interesting link between our homeless veterans and our veterans that are coming through the Veterans Courts. So real quick, I just wanted to kind of mention about what homeless programs we do have within the VA very quickly. So the way the homeless programs are is in the old days, we used to have, you know, one homeless coordinator at every VA, and that homeless coordinator, you know, had an office. Usually it was in the basement, and, you know, their office was full of surplus socks and MREs, and, you know, it was kind of an interesting mix. That person did everything. You know, if they were lucky, they had some gift cards that they would give out for gas, or they would have some kind of working agreement with a local hotel to put a veteran up for a couple days. But over the last probably 6 or 7 years, our VA homeless program has really evolved and really become sophisticated. So, for example, we have just to give you a quick rundown of our homeless services. So we have a program called the Contracted Emergency Residential Program, or CERS. And you'll hear that with us talking, there's just as many acronyms within the VA as there are, you know, within the military or anything else. It's its own language. So the CERS program is actually a contract with local shelters, local residential programs that are designed to get veterans off the street very quickly. It's not meant to be long-term, usually just a matter of maybe a week or two until we can get that veteran off the street and somewhere safe for the night. We have, across VISM 4, we have 15 contracts towards that program. The other program we have is called Grant and Per Diem, and that's a little bit more kind of a mid-range, mid-term program. These are grants, again, with local community partners that have residential beds, and they provide programming and staffing, and veterans, although they can stay in that program for up to 2 years, our VISM 4 average length of stay is around 3 months. So usually what happens is a veteran will get in there, and while they're at this program, they're receiving you know, some kind of programming, maybe saving up some money while our VA social workers have a chance to get in there and talk to them and develop some kind of long-term housing plan. The other program we have, which is one of our largest programs, as some of you may have heard, is HUD-VASH. And VASH is VA Supportive Housing. And what HUD-VASH is it's our partnership with HUD. And if some of you are familiar with Section 8 vouchers, it's exactly like that, only the vouchers are earmarked for veterans. So that's what so we work with a lot of our veterans to get these HUD-VASH vouchers where they can actually get permanent housing. And across VISM 4, we have just a little over 3,000 of those vouchers. And I'm actually proud to say that of those HUD-VASH vouchers, we have just a little over 92% of those vouchers, veterans are using them and are permanently housed, and the other remaining 8% are actually with veterans while they currently seek housing. So you can kind of see the progression of the system there. If you know, you can meet a veteran at the point of outreach, maybe get them into one of our CERS programs for a week, a few days. Maybe, maybe not, they go into the Grant and Per Diem, where they could be there for a month, 2 months, 3 months. And while they're there, they're working with our HUD-VASH workers to get maybe a HUD-VASH voucher, or look deployment, that sort of thing, and to move into permanent housing. One of our other bigger programs is also SSVF, Supportive Services for Veterans and Families. And so what that is that's grant money that goes out to community agencies, existing community agencies, and that money is allocated to assist veterans with things like first month's rent, security deposits, getting their electric turned on, things like that. So it's turned into a really kind of a complicated but sophisticated system that seems to work. I'm proud to say that since 2013, within that VISN, we've actually reduced veteran homelessness by almost 40%. I think the number is 39%. So kind of with that being said, the VJO program is another one of our great programs. I'm not afraid to say that of all those VA homeless programs, the VJO program is my favorite to work with, just because there's just so many success stories. And like somebody had mentioned earlier, you go to one of these graduations and you hear a veteran talk about what their life was like prior to coming in, and most of the time when they go in front of the judge, they're afraid, they're scared, because every time they've been in front of a judge, they felt, it had some kind of punitive outcome to it. But they tell us, the judges are so understanding and their staff is so great, and it's the first time I've been treated like a human being. So it's really makes you feel good and get some gratification and satisfaction in what we do to see those kind of results. So with that being said, I'm now going to turn it over to Christy, who's going to talk a little bit about the role of the VJO.
So I guess I have to come up.
Oh, you want to come up here?
Can you hear me if I don't? Oh, well, that's good. Okay, so a little bit about the Veteran Justice Program. I'm a Veteran Justice Outreach Coordinator, as well as the other individuals here on the panel, and it's a position that I will say we're all very, very passionate about. I never pass up an opportunity to talk about it. It's such a great, great program. It's a partnership is what it is. Like the VA wants to take care of our veterans, and that's not something that we can do without all of the partnerships that we have. And this is just a program that is such a great example of that. So we know that justice-involved veterans, just like other individuals in the criminal justice system, are very high risk, right? We know that they're at higher risk for homelessness. We know they're at higher risk for suicide. They are at higher risk for mental health disorders. They are at higher risk for substance use disorders. So this is a high-risk, vulnerable population. The Veteran Justice Outreach Program, basically, like the best way to describe it, what do we do? We're outreach. We are community-facing individuals. So we're not in our offices very much. If you need to reach us, you probably should call our cell phones. So, because that's where we are, is in our counties, in our communities, because the role, our job, is to identify those veterans who are in the criminal justice system. In order to do that, we don't know they exist unless somebody tells us. So we have relationships, we have partnerships with our jails, with our court system, with our magistrates, with our judges, with our probation officers, with our parole officers, with our magistrates, with all of those components of the criminal justice system. And it's very important for us to be able to take care of these individuals and to meet their needs and get them the treatment that they need. Then first they have to be identified, and linked to us. And we meet them wherever they are. If that's in jail, that's where we meet them. We meet with them wherever they are. We identify what their needs are, and we get them linked to treatment. Often, that might be linking them to the VA. Maybe they never utilized the VA. Maybe they didn't realize they were even eligible. It's getting them involved in treatment. And then it's linking them to those veterans courts in those counties that we have those. Where I work, we have 3 veterans courts in the area that I work in. So, and they're all 3 very, very busy courts. And then so there's a lot of linkage to those courts. But I think that's one of the most important pieces of the program. And as far as the role within the Veterans Court, we're just one of those spokes of the wheel. It's everybody involved in that court that makes those courts successful, and we're one of those spokes. We're kind of the liaison between the VA, between their treatment and that court system. We're helping them to get the treatment that they need, and then we're providing, those necessary updates to the court about how they're doing in treatment, or what more do they need, or, if they're struggling, like how can we help get them the services that they need. And what is nice about within the VA system too, which Bill alluded to, is, you know, if there's something that a veteran needs that is not available at my facility, say their provider thinks they need residential PTSD treatment and that's not available, you know, at the Butler VA, but that's available within the VISN, you know, and we can refer to other VAs and we can make sure that the veterans get the treatment that they need. So there were handouts, so you should have handouts that just kind of talk a little bit about the mission and vision of the Veteran Justice Outreach Program. The other thing too is there's a link, 2 links on the little handout that I provided. One, if you use that link, it gives you the VJO contact for your area. So if you're not sure who that individual is, you can click on that. You can search by state, by county to get that person, and it sends you directly to their email. So that's really nice to have. And then just the Justice for Vets website, of course, has tons of information on it, and just a brief overview of everything that we provide and how we interact in the community and with our criminal justice partners. So I think that's all.
And kind of one other thing to point out is, you know, within the VA, like any large organization, some things are the same and very standardized across the board. Other things can look very different even within that same program. So for example, you know, within the national VJO program, every single VA has a VJO team. Most of our VAs have 2. Some of our bigger programs have 3 or more, depending on their county coverage. But throughout that area, the programs, their roles are the same, but the programs can look very, very different, because where Christy comes from, the Butler VA covers, what, 5 counties, 6? 5 counties? But where Karen comes from, up in Wilkes-Barre, what do you have, an 18 or 19 county coverage area? And so within that area, we have, you know, the formal veterans treatment courts, and then we also have a whole mix of diversion courts, mental health, drug and alcohol courts, magisterial courts, and this is what these guys also work with as well. So I'm going to turn it over now to Jalou, who's going to talk a little bit about the veterans in the veterans treatment courts versus those who are in other tracks or maybe not in treatment courts.
Thank you. I hope everybody could hear me. I'll try and speak loudly. So I'm from the Lebanon VA Medical Center, like it was mentioned, and what we have in our catchment area, we have 9 counties that we cover, and we have 5 veterans courts at the moment. So I cover 2 veterans courts and 3 counties that do not have veterans courts. So I get to interact with a lot of different veterans that come in contact with the justice system, both through the Veterans Court program and also the ones that are not involved in the Vet Court program. And there's some significant differences. One of the things that I've encountered in the counties that I cover that do not have vet courts, there's still a willingness for the justice system there to want to help veterans, but they're just not as familiar with the needs that the veterans have and also the resources that are available to these veterans. I'll give 2 specific examples that I've encountered. Well, first I want to say, maybe I should say some of the positive stuff. So when the counties that don't have the vet court programs, I usually get notified by the prisons, whether it's attorneys or different things like that, or even providers that let me know that there's a veteran that has gotten involved with the justice system in some way. So if they're incarcerated, I'll go out there, I'll meet with the veteran, and usually I'll do an assessment to see what their treatment needs are, because while they're incarcerated, that facility should be providing all the treatment, so the VA cannot go in there and provide treatment to them while they're incarcerated. But if they're released, I could get them placed into treatment. So I could place consults. So I assess their needs, if they need individual treatment, groups, whatever it is. And then for those counties, I'll make like a treatment referral form or something, form that I use to kind of just show them that, hey, this veteran, maybe he's got PTSD and substance abuse, and this is the treatment that's available for him or her through the VA, and then the justice system there could decide what they're going to do. Will they allow this veteran to go and get the treatment, or are they going to send them to state, or whatever they're going to do? But I want to give those counties and those justice system at least the option that, hey, there's this treatment that's available through the VA, and that part, like it was mentioned earlier, doesn't cost the county anything either. Some of the stumbling blocks I encountered, while it's been very good, there are times where, I'll give a specific example. There's a veteran I've worked with, and he, Marine, 2 tours, Purple Heart, combat veteran. He had 3 DUIs. Again, never got any treatment, no treatment whatsoever. And this Marine was involved with the justice system and continued to get involved more and more because his needs were never really addressed. If you try and treat somebody with PTSD by sending them to rehab, it's not going to be successful. So that's some of the issues that was happening. And I know that individual's probation officer is getting kind of fed up because it's like, hey, they gave him chances. And at that point, they got kind of frustrated, like maybe we should just send him to jail. But again, his needs were not really met. Whereas with a Veterans Court program, I think the teams are far more sensitive to the needs of the individual. They know what is going on and what's available, and then they're more likely to help get them that treatment. Another issue that happens, that unfortunately happens in the counties that do not have the Vet Corps programs, they're less likely, and I'll give another example. This is a veteran I recently worked with. He was Army veteran, Cav Scout, deployed to Afghanistan 3 times. I know one of his tours was in the Korengal Valley, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but the Korengal Valley at that time, it was, has anybody here seen the movie Restrepo? Anybody that hasn't, I highly encourage you to watch that documentary or read the book War by Sebastian Junger, and it gives a lot of good insight into what some of these combat veterans will see. So anyway, this particular veteran was deployed. That was one of his 3 deployments, was to the Korengal Valley. And he's a binge drinker with PTSD. For the most part, did what a lot of veterans do, isolate, doesn't really go out to public or anything like that. But he did binge drink, and he got in trouble with the law, with the justice system. And unfortunately, there's no charge reduction. There's nothing like that. So he was in school to go for a career, which now is not an opportunity for him. Whereas if he would have been involved in vet court, they probably would have done some sort of a charge reduction. So now it's like the rest of his life, he's got to change career paths. So those are some of the issues with the counties that don't have vet courts. It's like they still are willing to work with the veterans, but unfortunately, those are just some of the challenges that I see. Again, the advantages as far as for the veterans that are involved in the vet court process, and a big part of that is that they get to see the judge and the team every week. And I say that that's important because treatment is not easy, and most people do not want to engage in treatment. They want to avoid treatment. So having to go and report how they're doing week to week keeps them accountable and keeps them on track with going to treatment. So that's a big advantage of that. The other thing is it also, what I find happens with the veterans that are not involved in vet court is they start bartering treatment with their providers. Meaning, again, if they're not in vet court, they go to their providers, and the provider says, oh, you could benefit from this, this, and that, but they can't mandate it. And the veteran's like, oh, I'm busy with work, I'm busy with this. So then they never engage with that, which is avoidance on their part. So then they say, well, I could come once a month. Is that okay? And the provider's going to say, oh, well, I guess it's okay. I mean, I can't force you. But if they try and do that with the judge in a vet court, that won't work out. The judge wants to know what's the recommended treatment, not what they can or can't do. So that really helps them be successful going forward because, again, if they don't get the treatment and they put work first, they're going to be involved with the justice system again, unfortunately. And that's some of the things that happens. So again, the advantages with vet court, charge reduction is a big thing. Getting the treatment, feeling like they have purpose again, because now they're part of a platoon again. They have like that feeling of being there. The mentors that are there for them, the constant readjusting to their treatment plans, that the changes to make sure that they're getting the appropriate treatment. So, and again, it's just it's the big team approach where everybody is on board to what's the best case for this veteran. So those are some of the advantages.
And one of the things that the VA is doing too is over the last probably 5 or 6 years, looking at some of these specialized areas of treatment and putting more resources into it. For example, one of the things we were talking earlier, and we're seeing a huge push in our caregiver support program. So, providing services and benefits to family members that may be taking care of an injured veteran at home and they can't afford to go to work. Right now, there's a big push for the IPVA, the Inter-Partner Violence Assistance Program, looking at domestic abuse as well as some of the services we're doing with the LGBT community. So we're seeing a lot of our post-9/11, our OEF-OIF, and our post-9/11 veterans coming into the system, even the homeless system, where maybe they weren't there 10 years ago. And, I think this is just my own theory. Please don't quote me on this. There's no research to back any of this up, just from what I've seen in 10 years. But when our younger veterans come back, they still have the support of their military buddies. They still have their parents. Usually their parents are still, in their 50s, 60s, and still very supportive. They still have the spouse at home. And now that a lot of our our combat veterans have been home for 10 or 15 years, now we're seeing the drug and the alcohol issues start to finally catch up with them, and they're having issues at work. And over the last 10 years, things aren't going well, with their marriage. Maybe they lost contact with their military buddies. So in the last 5 or 6 years, I've personally seen an increase in the OEF-OIF and the post-9/11 veterans enter the legal system and enter the homeless system. So with that being said, also I'm going to turn it over to Karen now, who's going to talk about, she does a lot of work in Luzerne County, and she's going to give some examples and kind of share some of her experience with us.
Thanks. I've been asked to talk a little bit about Luzerne County because they have what is a veterans track program versus a full veterans treatment court. I'm certainly not the expert in their veterans track program. That would be, Judge Sklarowski and the treatment coordinators, Dr. Anzalone and Kelly Cesari. But I can speak to my experiences in working with that court. And it's my understanding that due to funding and staffing, they were unable to roll out to a full veterans court. So they decided to try out a veterans track program. The Veterans Track program there is similar to the programs that they already have. They already have in place a drug treatment court and a mental health court. So in order for a veteran to enter into the Luzerne County Veterans Track, they have to apply to one or the other based on whatever their particular need may be. They must meet the same criteria and be eligible for either the drug treatment court or the mental health court. And once they identify as a veteran, then they're funneled into that Veterans Track. So they follow pretty much the same protocol that all of the other participants in the separate treatment courts must follow, but they've shaped it more towards recognizing and bringing together the veterans separately. So the meetings still occur, but then the court itself is a separate veterans court docket where the veterans come in individually, separate from the other treatment courts. They fashioned it so that it would recognize their veteran service. They start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they also, what is different from treatment courts and veterans courts, is that they've developed the mentor program within it. So they have a mentor coordinator, then they have volunteer mentors who serve as the mentors for the participants in the program to provide them specific support while they go through the program, and it helps their separate treatment court programs because now the veterans are able to be funneled through the VA. So it utilizes less of the community resources and is able to utilize the VA resources for support and treatment and a lot of the programs that were already mentioned, like the homeless program. One of the examples that I can think of in terms of why a veterans track or a veterans court program is so beneficial is that I've been working with a veteran who had 20 years of literal homelessness, and that is living in encampments, bathing in creeks, using the soup kitchens for food, and he has multiple prior legal issues. He's been in and out of the hospital multiple times throughout the 20 years that he's been working with homeless staff at the VA and has never had any consistent stability. He was incarcerated for several months and then they agreed to accept him into the Veterans Track program. Since his acceptance into the program, there's a huge change in him as an individual. I had the opportunity to pick him up from jail and actually transport him to our homeless program where he was housed. And I can tell you that initial visit with him, driving him to the program, he was quiet, kind of sullen, very anxious. But since being in the program, he has really opened up. I actually drive him every week to court. So I spend a lot of time with him driving back and forth. And what he expresses now is gratitude towards this Veterans Track program because in 20 years, he has never had a roof over his head. He's never been stable with his mental health because he's now getting his medications regularly, his visits regularly. He has now been sober since his incarceration. He went from incarceration to the program. So that's approximately 8 months, which is the longest sobriety he has ever had. His medical conditions are under control. He had uncontrolled diabetes. And so I really feel like without the opportunity to have entered into this program, he would not have the stability that he has today. So I agree with what Jalou was saying earlier, is that we work very well with counties that do not have a veterans court or a veterans track program. But I do think what is missing is the ability to have extra support and accountability. And I think without that support and accountability, this particular veteran may still be living, in encampments and, he's shared many stories with me about what it's like to live in the elements, in the heat, in the cold, and it just sounds awful. So to see him doing so well and thriving now with the support that he has, I think is great, so.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even, success on the first try either. Sometimes it's the third or the fourth or the fifth try. And we got to remember sometimes you just got to meet, these individuals at where they're at. And like Karen said, we've met some veterans that after they get housed, the landlord will come to us and they'll be kind of concerned because, oh, I saw that person, walking down the street and he was looking up in the air all disheveled and mumbling to himself. And, we say, well, that may not be baseline for us, or maybe that veteran's apartment's all in disarray and that may be not how we would live. But, for that particular individual, that's the most stable this person has been in 20 years. So we kind of got to look at it from, the veteran experience as to where they're at also. So we've seen some pretty interesting situations where, reaching out to that veteran multiple times where it finally clicks. We've had veterans that we put in apartments and went back to visit them shortly after, and they're still living on the streets using their apartment to store their belongings. Or we've had veterans that had finally got permanent housing and they relapsed with alcohol and they went and they turned their keys into their landlord and said, well, I guess I'm kicked out of the program now because in the old days when I relapsed, I got kicked out of the program. We're like, no, this is your permanent place. This is your apartment. And the fact that you relapsed, we want to help you with that and get past that or through that. Just don't turn your keys in and you're done with the program. So we see some pretty unique challenges. And one of the things I kind of want to put out to you as a group is, you know, here at the VA, when it comes especially to this program, I mean, we're a total open book. So for the counties that don't have a veterans treatment court or don't have some kind of veterans track, we're all up for any ideas. I mean, you heard some of the examples. I mean, no matter how crazy the idea may seem, if there's an idea for a pilot project at a specific county or to test a method or something that we can do, we're all open to taking ideas and trying different things.
That was one thing I was going to add is that, you know, we've worked with Luzerne County for their veterans track, and now there's another county within our catchment area that's going for a veterans track. And I think anybody who's considering it should know that, you know, your local VJO is an excellent source of information and support in terms of trying to help you create that track or that court if that's where you're leaning towards, because they can help with that connection and that just that support through the VA.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of, one of the ways to kind of maybe view that your VJO is like your gateway. Like Bill touched on a lot of different programs within the VA. It can be complicated, it can be overwhelming, like how do I even get, you know, through that? That's kind of our role, like we're kind of that gateway to help navigate that whole VA system and help get people where they need to be. And there's actually over 550, there's over 550 VJOs supporting veteran courts across the country in one way or the other. Like whether that be like a track like HERT or formal veterans courts. So any way that we can help facilitate that, we're happy to do that. The earlier the veteran is identified in the process, like another thing that we do a lot is provide education and do trainings such as CIT trainings and any kind of police trainings and anything like that, because the earlier, you know, a veteran is identified, and we have these police referral cards, and it's happened several times now over the last few years since I started getting to doing these police trainings more and things like that, where I get calls like either from a police officer saying, I arrested this individual over the weekend, here's their name, or a veteran himself or herself saying, you know, I got this card, I was arrested, and the police officer that arrested me said, call you. Like, that's great, because then we can immediately get that person into, you know, connected to treatment that they need sooner, you know, rather than later. So.
The things that I want to mention, Christy was talking about identifying early. At the Lebanon VA, we started, basically it's a pilot program that we're hoping to spread out then to the VISN and see how that goes. But it's what we are calling at the moment the Central Booking Project, and currently we have 3 counties on board. So what that is to identify veterans when they go into booking. That booking will then notify us that a self-identified veteran went to booking, because oftentimes what was happening, by the time veterans got referred to VJOs to us, they were already facing some serious charges. So if we could identify them early on, we could offer them treatment and hopefully avoid ever having to encounter us down the road. I mean, that would be the best case scenario. So what we're trying to do right now with these counties is they're sending us any self-identified veterans, we're verifying their service, and we're enrolling them if they're not already enrolled, and then we're also reaching out to them, letting them know these are the services that are available, and the ones that are not VA eligible, we're connecting them with the county resources or different community resources that they could benefit from. And I mean, really, it's been pretty successful so far. We've had about 1,850 referrals, and about 25% of those have been VA eligible, so quite a few that have not, but that's what's going on so far. If I'm in front of my computer, about a minute.
Getting all the referrals. We're having a terrible time. We have like maybe 150 referrals a month. Getting them verified and ready for our referral meeting.
Well, I guess there's two questions. I could verify that, yes, this person served this much and they're eligible, but at the second part that would take a little bit longer is we'd have to have them fill out a 1010 easy and then having them enrolled. So is it the enrollment or the verifying that's the
Or is it-
verifying is quick, the enrollment takes a little bit longer.
Or is it getting their DD 214? Because sometimes
Right.
that also might take a little to verify, like you said, it's quick. But if it's waiting for their DD 214, then that can be a little while.
You request those, or do you require the veteran to produce that?
They have to produce that because the DD 214 comes from DOD, not from the VA. So that's a totally separate system that has nothing to do with the VA.
That's probably a big part of our problem. They're not producing them.
But it's a pretty simple process to request that, and we can help the veteran complete that process to request it. We can't do it for them, but we can help them complete that process, or anyone can really, if they're not sure how to exactly request that. It is a pretty simple process to request it. It's just then waiting to receive it can sometimes take a little while.
Hi, good morning. I'm a county director of Veterans Affairs, as well as Rich next to me. Connect with your county director. We have access, most of us should have access to the DoD system called DPRIS. We do need a release of information to access a veteran. If they've served within about the last 20 years, depending on branch of service, we can access their entire personnel file, which includes their 214 and sometimes other information, which may explain why they got a general under honorable or something like that. It's all about that holistic backstory. We also, if we represent the veteran in the VA system for compensation or can take representation, we can also go into the VA benefit management system and sometimes pull a 214 and or personnel file out of there. All else, then you got to reach out to St. Louis, of course, for which we can assist with completing that paperwork. But if you're not connected with your county director, you're missing a big piece of the puzzle here.
And just one of the things I want to mention, so if a veteran is seen, and oftentimes I encounter veterans when they're incarcerated, so they're not going to have their DD 214s and they're not going to be enrolled. So I go through some of my systems, I verify that their service is there, and I could enroll them without their DD 214s if they're VA eligible. So for that purpose, it's like we could get them enrolled as VJOs, get them enrolled relatively quickly. We cut through it, we make it a lot quicker than if they would go through the normal enrollment process. So we enroll them, we get them eligible for service, and then we could have a console placed and even have them placed in inpatient if the county works with us. I mean, really from seeing them to having them in inpatient in 7 days at times if things go smoothly. So there's no DD 214 that's necessary, nothing like that once we verify that. Now, we always encourage them to get their DD 214s if they don't have that, because that's just a good thing for them to have for all kinds of different services.
Yeah, if we can verify their eligibility, that they are, their veteran eligibility, yeah, we can get them registered in a day.
And one thing, also to keep in mind too, when we get this question a lot, like someone will just come up to me and know that I work for the VA and say, well, my husband, and they'll start giving me their backstory and say, is he eligible for the VA? Or they say, well, because our income is at a certain level or they served for a certain amount of time or their discharge is such and such, my husband's not eligible, right? But I mean, with that, the eligibility process for the VA is very complicated. So I never tell anybody no and turn anybody away. My advice is to talk to somebody at your local VA in the enrollment and eligibility, or even, these guys here are experts. Example, if somebody had suffered from military sexual trauma, MST, they're entitled to services. We deal a lot. We recently had a veteran who had an other than honorable discharge, but was stationed down at Camp Lejeune during the whole water incident. And we were able to we're working on getting that veteran services to get him treatment for that. Things like the burn pit registry, various mental health issues. So there's a lot of services available, even if they're just limited, that we can help a veteran and in the meantime work with him or her in getting them connected to a community resource if they're not going to be with the VA, long term.
To add that as VJOs, when we identify someone and they're not eligible for VA services, we're not then just like, okay, like good luck. we're then connecting them to community resources and giving them those referrals and making those connections so that they can still get the help that they need, and also just kind of going through that eligibility process, like Bill said, because it's always changing too. Like there's been new directives just in the last year that changes it. So it's always good to always complete the 1010EZ and apply so that you're on record at your local VA, because maybe 6 months down the road something will change and now you're eligible. So
I don't mean to take up too much time here, but the one thing with the VA, and this is nobody's fault, a lot of times when the VA is verifying, you're looking at a computer screen, and you're not holding a piece of paper in your hand. And I had 2017, a veteran came to me, and she said, nobody can ever get my 214. There's issues. I don't know what's going on. This veteran was receiving VA healthcare services, VA housing services, amongst other things, and the computer screen showed dates of service, I think 2001, 2004, honorable discharge. It took me several months to go through to finally realize and find out that the reason this veteran didn't have a 214 is she had gone AWOL in 2002. But the VA system showed her as having honorable service based on what she had told them. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but it's so important to have that piece of paper as well. Enroll them in the system, get them the services, but we need to then go back and make sure what they're saying is absolutely the correct information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen veterans come in.
It's all a partnership.
Yeah, we've seen veterans come in with wrong information on their DD 214, and just like you said, we kind of combing through the system and working through it, but we do see a lot of errors like that. So that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, we can't help them if they're walking out the door.
Because in the same respect, I had a veteran once who was reporting service in Iraq, and his DD 214 didn't show that. And so it took him finding an actual pay stub that showed combat pay, hostile something pay. Yeah. So, and that was what actually verified to them, and he had the upgrade, the DD 215. So.
And the other way too, I have a female veteran currently that I'm working with who was deemed ineligible by the VA, but because I went ahead and completed all of the paperwork anyway, she is now receiving services for MST. So she may not have had the time in service, but she is still eligible. And is now receiving a service-connected compensation, is now in our residential program, and her life has completely changed around. So the life of her kids has completely changed around. So kind of following that process and never just kind of making those assumptions whether someone is eligible or not, like you said, just kind of try to get them enrolled and get them in treatment, and then see what you can get, find out in all their paperwork. So
to piggyback on what Karen said about the pay stub, there's a DFAS. If you're in the military, you're familiar with the defense, finance and accounting system. You get on their website, MyPay website, you can get leave earning statements from whatever era you were in. and it could, and sometimes does say, you know, hostile fire pay, imminent danger pay, to verify some of the service that they have had overseas. So when all else fails, that's another option that you've got.
All right, anything else from any of you guys?
There's a question over here.
Oh, yes.
I'd love to hear a story from each of you about where you've seen the VA making a difference in the lives of our veterans, whether it be through helping with the court system or how things have worked out. In fact, your favorite story of working with our veterans.
Okay, I could share one that just happened actually last week, so that's why it's fresh in my mind. But prior to being a VJO, I worked at the Vet Center, which I know Karen did as well. So that's a specialty program that works with war theater veterans and their families. So now as a VJO, I was in one of my veterans courts, and a new county employee came into the vet court, and he's doing really, really well and everything. And everyone got introduced to him, and he actually stood up in the court and he shared. And this isn't just the VA. This was, I guess, personal to me, so that's why I'm sharing it. But I guess 9 years ago, this particular veteran was homeless, and he was homeless in Lancaster. And somebody there gave him my card, and he drove up to see me, and I got him in contact with the homeless outreach workers and everything, got him housed. He went through Voc Rehab, did all this stuff. Now he's got his master's degree, he's really successful, and he shared that I helped him. And I did not remember this at all. I did not remember, no recollection of it whatsoever. But it was nice hearing that, you know, he went and he told me he was sleeping in his pickup truck, homeless, when he came to see me, and that, like, that was all the gas he had in his car at that point. So it's like he went from that to now he's successful and he's doing really well. So this happened last week, so that's why it's quite fresh in my mind. I wish I would have remembered the session, but he was saying things I said, which I have no idea I said.
I think for me, real quick, one of the things, I mean, we've seen a lot of veterans with a lot of serious medical issues and injuries from especially Iraq and Afghanistan. But so we have a really great relationship with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and every year they do an event called the Heroes at Heinz. And so we're allowed to invite upwards of like 70 veterans, and they can bring a guest. And they come down to Heinz Field, and there's players there, and they interact with them and get autographs and stuff. It's just, you know, our intentions aren't to get enrollment or anything. It's just there to kind of, we kind of reserve our invite list for veterans that we know that's been kind of having a hard time and just kind of, you know, need a little pick-me-up. So this young veteran comes in, and he's with I assumed it was his father. And the whole time, the father's kind of staring at me with this kind of disgruntled look. And I'm thinking, oh, you know, he's probably got a problem with the VA. I'm sure I'm going to hear about it at some point. So after the event, where everybody's leaving, we're saying goodbye to people, the father comes up to me and he says, you know, I'm a Vietnam veteran. We've never had anything like this for us, but I want to thank you for doing this for my son. And it just I don't know, it just kind of touched me, you know, hearing something like that.
Well, I think, the original story that I shared was a great success. But I have another example of a veteran, and I just actually received an update on him yesterday, that he was someone who had applied for one of our vet courts and was denied based on he was legally denied. It was based on his charges. And he had a lot of actual obstacles based on these charges. But since the public defender's office was actually in his corner and utilized the VJO to help with providing information about what resources, programs, treatment, and things were available to him. So he was able to enter into our 21-day rehab program. He went there to a longer-term domiciliary program where he spent about 3 months for treatment there, and was homeless and discharged from there into our homeless program, and received an update yesterday about how he is doing wonderful. how his violent charge was directly associated with his drug use. So he's been clean and sober since his incarceration and his involvement in treatment. And he's actually becoming a leader in the homeless program with the residents where he's living, and very vocal about his recovery. So it really made me feel good to know that even though he had all of these obstacles to overcome, he was able to really do well and continues to do well.
I have so many, like, coming into my mind of like, which one do I pick? But just to kind of show like the kind of the back and forth sometimes that occurs. A female veteran that was in one of our veterans courts in one county, 4 children all in foster care, just, really had a lot of difficulties in her life, was very successful in that program for a long period of time, completed an initial 2 months of inpatient, followed by another 6 months of inpatient, went to a specialty program for MST and PTSD, and was actually in the process of getting her children back, and in fact had out of her 4 children, 2 of them had been returned to her. The other 2 were getting visits. In addition, she worked with our homeless team because she was homeless upon entering the program. She went through some transitional housing and then was placed in a HUD-BASH home. So she was able to get a 4-bedroom home so that she would have a home for her children to be returned to. She worked with our compensated work therapy program because she had been out of the workforce for a while. So that's another program within the VA where they can work, so many hours a week within the VA setting, just to kind of get them back into the workforce. So she was able to do that and start working again. While she was in this treatment court program in this county, she made some bad decisions and ended up picking up new charges, and that Veterans Court terminated her from their program. She struggled for a couple months. We continued to work with her. When someone when someone has difficulties, they may not be able to continue in maybe that Veterans Court or whatever that may be, but like as the VJO, we continue to work with those individuals. She was still in her HUD-BASH, so she still had her HUD-BASH case manager working with her and providing her support. Her children actually re-entered foster care through this process. She was able to get connected back into treatment over the course of a few months, and is now in Veterans Court in another county, the county that she received. They decided to give her another chance because it doesn't always happen the first time, right? We know that. So now she is participating in another one of our Veterans Courts, doing really well in that Veterans Court, has all of her children back in her care, is working a full-time job in the community now, so completed the CWT program and is working full-time in the community, and yeah, she's doing really well. So it doesn't, I think it's important, to see that, like, it may not happen the first time or the second time or maybe not even the third time, but when you see someone's life being restored, it doesn't really matter how many times it takes sometimes, so, yeah.
Question for the panel. In the York Veterans Court, we see most of our participants have co-occurring disorders. They have post-traumatic stress or an anxiety disorder, and then they self-medicate with whatever substance to try to deal with that. Could I ask the panel to address for everyone, why is it so important to address both of those issues concurrently as opposed to dealing with them consecutively? In other words, not say, well, we're going to deal with your alcohol problem now and we'll deal with mental health later on down the road.
One of the things that is so important, and I think that's one of the strengths of Veterans Court, is being able to address all of those needs, is oftentimes what would happen is somebody would get involved with the justice system because of DUI or substance abuse related treatment. And again, treating that over and over again will not get to the root problem. So oftentimes is treating everything at once, especially if it's trauma, then you have to treat the trauma, and there's many studies that show treating the trauma and then the substance abuse naturally reduces even without receiving treatment for the substance abuse if the trauma is addressed. If they have other mental health issues, oftentimes it's getting that medication stabilized so then that the treatment can be effective. So they're not going to really get much out of treatment, out of substance abuse treatment, if their mental health is not being addressed. So you have to treat both of them. And it's important also if you're treating the mental health, but then they're, they have that substance dependence, you have to treat that as well. So you have to do all of it because, again, it's all very connected. So, if somebody, for example, is addicted to opiates and you're treating him from depression, that's good, but now that addiction's not treated, so they're likely to relapse. So you have to treat both at once.
Way to look at that too is just think of it from like the medical perspective. If someone has high blood pressure and diabetes, you're not just going to treat one of them and then wait until that one's taken care of before you treat the other one. You're going to have to provide treatment for all of those co-occurring medical problems. So same concept, with any kind of mental health or substance use, all of those co-occurring disorders, you have to provide treatment for all of those simultaneously.
Because I think what we see often too is if you're just treating the substance abuse and then they enter into trauma treatment, you often see then a relapse because you've removed what they've used as a coping mechanism, and now you're having them face these traumatic memories, thoughts, feelings that they've been trying to avoid. And we know PTSD is a disease of avoidance, so we're going to do whatever we can to keep those thoughts, feelings, memories away from us, so that would, lead them back towards using whatever helps them to do that. So I think the treatment occurring together is pretty vital.
I think we're good.
That these guys have for their work as VJOs. They truly do go above and beyond. So a big hand again for the VJOs. Thank you, guys. Next, for our conference closing remarks, we have Angela Lowry, our State Problem-Solving Court Administrator here in Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon again, everyone. And there's nothing like the pressure of being asked to speak right before lunch. So I promise to be brief. First and foremost, on behalf of the AOPC, I would like to thank Dean Johnson and the Widener University Commonwealth Law School for including us in today's programming. I'd also like to extend our appreciation to all of the veterans here today. Thanks to you all for everything that you do and your dedication to this country. Additionally, I would like to thank everyone who participated on this morning's panels. I really felt that all of your insights were invaluable, and we really appreciate you being with us here today. As well as recognize Supreme Court Justice Deborah Todd, who is the liaison to Veterans Courts and whose support has been instrumental in advancing the vision and mission of Veterans Treatment Courts. We're very appreciative of her, as well as Rhonda Campbell, and all of their time and efforts on this important issue. And last, but certainly not least, I would like to recognize my team at the AOPC, Andy Simpson, Brandy Yasenchak, and Nevin Warner. They work tirelessly, oftentimes behind the scenes, making sure that Pennsylvania's treatment courts have the support that they need to be the best in the country. And so thank you for all of your hard work. This morning has been chock full of information on veterans courts and their benefits. And the theme of today's event is making the case for veterans courts. But even before today, the word is getting out that veterans treatment courts work. Last year at this time, we had 20 veteran treatment courts And I'm happy to report that in 1 year's time, just 1 year's time, we have opened 5 new courts in the state of Pennsylvania. We currently have 25 operational veterans treatment courts, along with a handful of drug courts with veterans tracks, as we've heard about this morning, one of those being in Luzerne County. And so that's something that we're really proud of. And I hope when I come back next year, I can tell you that we've opened 5 more courts. When I was here last year, I also said I hope that I would get the chance to come back and report on everything that we've accomplished over the past year. Well, I'm glad to be back, and I'm happy to report that in addition to opening 5 new courts, we've been busy with a host of other projects as well. We hosted a VJO workshop and received such great feedback that we're hosting another one in November. Pennsylvania was also one of 5 states in the country selected to work with the Center for Court Innovation on a statewide strategic plan for veterans courts. And as part of that, we're going to receive $200,000 to help us implement certain pieces of that strategic plan. We're in the process of finalizing that plan, and we have a lot of great initiatives lined up in 2020. Also, just this past Wednesday and Thursday, we were able to provide a mentor boot camp training through Justice for Vets, which was the first of its kind offered in the state. We had approximately 50 mentors, some of whom I see here today with us, from 14 different counties who participated in that training, which provided them with the knowledge and the skills necessary to support their mentees throughout their time in Veterans Treatment Court. As you can see, we have a lot of great things going on, and our team is really excited to see how the next year unfolds. Veterans and veterans treatment courts are a priority in Pennsylvania, and we at the AOPC will continue to work to strengthen our existing courts and to tout their benefits. So I said I would be brief, and so with that, we have lunch for all of you out in the hallway, and you are welcome to bring your food back to your seat and enjoy your food while you listen to our keynote speaker in about 10 minutes?
Probably
About 10 minutes. Thank you.
We hope that everyone had a chance to eat their fill. There is still a lot of food out in the foyer area. We've really had a terrific day today, and I've been surprised at this being our 3rd program, how different each year has been. We've kind of rounded out what turns out to be a relatively complicated problem, is helping veterans that have found themselves caught up in the criminal justice system and helping them to turn their lives around and to move forward. We are thrilled now to have Major General Anthony Corelli, who's the Adjutant General of Pennsylvania. And what that means is he is in charge of the Pennsylvania National Guard and also in charge of veteran services here in the state of Pennsylvania. And there's a multitude of hats and responsibilities that our general wears. We're grateful to have him here. He's been a tremendous friend of the law school. At one of our next meetings, we'll have to give you an honorary degree, given all of the times that you have spoken to us and worked with us here. I've had a chance to hear the general speak numerous times. He truly is a great advocate for veterans. I think that comes from 4 decades of service, 3 decades of service in the military. He's been active duty. He's now been involved with the reserves for years, and we're very lucky to have him here to speak to us. So please join me in welcoming the General.
Thank you, Dean, and good afternoon, everybody. Please, as the Dean said, they spent a lot of money. There's still a lot of food out there. One thing I've learned from all my time in uniform is if the troops haven't eaten, the troops aren't happy. So get up as you need to, and make sure you get plenty to eat. I want to thank you all for being here. This subject matter is near and dear to my heart. You know, in a lot of circles, it's an uncomfortable topic to talk about. You know, in uniform, I'm the biggest fan of all of our currently serving guardsmen, our retirees, all of our veterans, and I tell you, I can't be prouder of what they've done for the Commonwealth and what they've done for this nation. And you know, unfortunately, some of our veterans and some of our guardsmen are struggling, and they have lost their way, and they are and have found themselves in our criminal justice system. And I know in a lot of places it's easier just to ignore that and just not talk about that, because you know, that's not something that we want to shine a bright light on, because we're always talking about how great our veterans are and our military is. But it's, you know, it's part of reality. I look across our force, and I couldn't be happier with the young people, the experienced people that we have. You know, our youngest guardsman in Pennsylvania's National Guard are 17 years old. I haven't even graduated high school yet, and they're already in our National Guard. And of course, mandatory retirement age for most is at 60. So we have the entire gamut, you know, from people from 17-year-olds to 60. And of course, here in Pennsylvania, we have the 4th largest veterans population in the country, nearly 800,000 veterans here in Pennsylvania. We still have 26,000 World War II vets still in Pennsylvania, all in their 90s, you know, just incredible experiences. You know, I get to talk to them quite frequently, and I'm still absolutely amazed at the things they've done. If you look at the people we have in uniform today, it's the best of the best. I am so happy and so proud every time I see them in their trainings and their deployments. I just got back this week with the governor. We were in Lithuania and Poland. We went to go see some of our troops in Lithuania, and then we have an armored battalion task force in Poland, about 30 miles from the Russian border, sitting in their tanks and their Bradleys, facing the Russian hordes on the other side of the border. And we know with Crimea and some of the other situations, security in Europe is not a sure thing at this point, and the United States put a force of U.S. troops out there to ensure peace remains in Eastern Europe. And for the next year, it's been already about 4 months since they got there. That force is from Pennsylvania. So if the Russians did ever decide to roll across, Pennsylvanians will draw up first blood. So I'll tell you, talking with those soldiers out there and talking to their families, I couldn't be prouder. It is the best of Pennsylvania. It's our best, the great attitudes, our brightest people, some of the smartest people and the most motivated people that you'd ever want to meet. That's who we have serving in our force. Okay, so that said, how come when our serving military leave the military, sometimes not by their own choice, sometimes due to the circumstances of some sort of trouble they get into, and you look across our veterans across Pennsylvania and across the United States as well, how come these same people that I'm talking about, the best of the best, how come they have a much higher rate of suicide than anyone else in the country? Okay, how come they have higher rates of unemployment than anyone else? How come they have higher rates of addiction than anyone else? Mental health problems more than anyone else. Okay, these were the best of the best. These are some of the greatest Pennsylvanians and Americans that you'd ever want to meet. And if I can take each one of you into our formations and show you, you would agree with me. But the simple reality of it is that service comes at a price. And some of our young service members, and of course it happens to some of our older as well. But you got to realize these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, some of the things that we ask them to do. And if you can walk in their shoes for a day and some of the deployments they've been on and see the horrific things that they've had to experience day after day after day, it has had an effect on them, okay? There is certainly a lot of mental scarring, and some physical scarring as well from some horrific injuries that they've had to endure. And a lot of times that leads to issues later in life. And that's some of the people that we're talking about right now. You know, that's why it's important for us to discuss this and talk about this, okay? There's a reason behind some of the ones that we're talking about, okay? And I was in a county court system. We toured the correction facility in one of our counties here in Pennsylvania, and they introduced me to this soldier who has lost his way, and he is now in the correctional process. He's in a facility. It was a county facility at the time. Okay, this is the example that I love to use, because it's the same kind of people that I'm talking about that I have in uniform right now, the best of the best. This kid was phenomenal high school, captain of the football team, smart, straight A's. All colleges wanted this kid. Everybody loved this kid. The school loved this kid. Did other activities near the top of his class. Wanted to serve in the United States military. Joined the Army. Okay, had a phenomenal career his first couple of years. Went on a deployment. Had some issues on that deployment. Went on another deployment. Had some severe issues on that, including some major injuries to his body. Ended up on a lot of prescribed painkillers to try to deal with the post-surgeries and some of the things. And that's kind of where he lost his way, went off the tracks, okay? Got addicted to the opioids, couldn't control the addiction, couldn't get enough through legal means, and then started abusing drugs, okay? Long story short, ended up being discharged out of the Army with a bad discharge, got thrown back into the community, couldn't find his way there, and found himself into the criminal justice system, okay? These are exactly the kind of people we're talking about, okay? What is the responsibility of our society? This was a model kid. This was the best of the best that everybody would want. The kind of kid that you want your daughter to date, to fall in love with, to start a family with. The kind of kid that you would want to work in your business. You know, the kind of person that you'd want on your team. Okay, now look at him now, right? We did this to him, okay? We, as a nation, we broke him because of what we did to him. We have an obligation to fix him, right? So that starts with our criminal justice system, and that's what this Veterans Courts and all these services that we do for our veterans in these correctional institutions are designed to do. We owe them that, okay? You know, there's a difference between good people that through their military service ended up losing their way, and possibly someone you would characterize as a career criminal that happened to serve in the military. There's a difference there. And I put quite a few people in that first category, and I think it's every one of our responsibilities to go find them and help them, because we played a part in breaking them, okay? And yes, not everybody reacts to stress and hardship the same way, but for those in the room, myself included, that have not had to walk street by street, house by house, door by door, and do the kind of things that we ask these kids to do, okay? Who are we to judge? That's the way I look at this, okay? I've been an adjutant general now for almost 4 years. About 2.5, 3 years ago, working with the Corrections Secretary, John Wetzel, who was bragging about his veteran service units here in the state of Pennsylvania, at the state correctional institutes. I said, you know what, I gotta go see this for myself. And I've never been to a prison before, and made a trip out to go see one of these veteran service units in our state prisons. And I was told ahead of time, you know, this is how it's gonna work, this is what you're gonna see. There are a number of prisoners there that are there for a fairly long time. There are some that are there for life, have no chance of parole. But this veteran service unit is full of these kind of people that essentially have done these type of things and their sentences are for this long, but these are the things that we're doing with them in this Veteran Service Unit. So I go with my sergeant major to the block. We walk through all the security gates and everything to get to this Veteran Service Unit. And again, I've never been in a prison, so I really just didn't know what to expect. But I'm going to see veterans that have been incarcerated, and some of them for a very long time, and some of them that haven't been in the service for decades, and some of them that have no hope of ever seeing the light of day again out of that facility. So I didn't know really what to expect. And as I walked in there in the cell block with my sergeant major, I could see a lot of them just sitting around in the seats in the there's like a main assembly room. And as I walk in the door, something that I never expected happened. Okay, nobody called the room to attention, but all the veterans in that room stood at attention when I walked in the room. I thought that was odd. Okay, and I walked up to them and I started talking to each one of them, and I told everybody to relax, stand at ease, and most of them were standing there at parade arrest. And as I would walk up to each one of them and stick my hand out to introduce myself and talk to them, they stood there at attention to talk to me. And everything was, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, Sergeant Major, no, Sergeant Major. Sir, may I ask you a question? And I'm like, okay, these people haven't been in the military in decades. And yes, they've lost their way. And some of them have done some pretty horrific things. That's why they are where they are. But it absolutely amazed me that military discipline, that esprit de corps, just the respect that goes with serving in the military, it hasn't left them yet. Okay, yeah, maybe it was down below the surface, but when they saw other military people walk in uniform, it came right back just like that. And it was amazed to me that some of the people that actually probably, I wouldn't say deserve, but certainly would be understandable, have some of the worst attitudes of anybody you would ever meet, were just as respectful as some of my own currently serving soldiers. I didn't see a whole lot of difference in the way they talk to me as the way that our currently serving soldiers talk to me. It's still there. That military service makes such an impact on every single person who's had to go through that experience. Regardless of what has happened to them, it's still there. That's when I looked at, and understood kind of why we're having such success in those veteran service units. That's why I think this Veterans Court thing is such a great program and has such great potential, because that discipline is still inside every one of those veterans. Someone just needs to bring it out. Okay, if we get a judge who understands that, we can find mentors who will work with these veterans. I think we can bring that out in each one of these people, and we have a great chance of doing a lot more great work in rehabilitation than they would otherwise just going through the normal system, where none of that is recognized and that stays essentially repressed inside each one of them. I, as a military commander, play a role in some of this. I understand that. I think I have a unique situation because, as the dean introduced, I'm not only the military commander in Pennsylvania, but I'm also the director of Veterans Affairs. So I see both sides, and I understand that veterans piece. So I tell you, when a discharge comes to my desk, and anyone who's being discharged at the Pennsylvania National Guard, their package will come to my desk. It is my decision as to what kind of discharge they're going to get. And I will tell you, I am in a much different place than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in what I recognize or recommend or assign that characterization to be. Because I've seen it time and time and time again. Good people, okay, that have just lost their way, but we put them through hell. We put them through some horrific experiences. And we shouldn't be surprised when some of them go off the tracks. So we got to have some understanding there. We got to have some care there. We got to be able to reach out. And it's way too easy to give every single one of them a bad discharge and just say, well, you did this and this is what you get for it. Okay? And the correctional system is the same way. It's way too easy just to judge on the surface saying, you did this and now you get that. Okay? Well, if we're doing that, then why do we need a judge? Okay? We just need a matrix saying, if you did this, you get that. So let's get judges, you know, and again, I'm thankful for the ones we have, the courts, the veterans courts that we already have, but we don't have enough. We need to get more and more, and we need to get people who understand what our veterans have been through, and it's not an automatic. And, you know, and in many of these cases, our society owes these veterans back because we're the ones that broke them. Okay, I look at a discharge case that I just had probably about a year ago now. It was a soldier, 17 years of service, and obviously you need to get to 20 to get to a retirement. The soldier had 17 years of retirement, and then all of a sudden was AWOL. Stopped showing up. AWOL for a number of months, 9, 10 months. They started the package to come to my desk. By the time I got to my desk, the soldier's been AWOL for now a year and a half. Okay, all the commanders throughout the chain of command recommended other than honorable discharge. You know, this is an older soldier, 17 years of service, was an NCO, knows better, and just stopped coming. He deserves an other than honorable discharge. And I look at it on my desk, and I'm like, why? Why would someone who's that old and that experienced, that knows so much about the military, 3 years from retirement, why would he just stop coming? It's just something's not right. You know, so I asked the Sergeant Major to look into it. He looked at what the unit was. He knew somebody from that unit. He started doing some, so we do a little bit of research to it. And we see this soldier was undergoing some just absolutely tragic family circumstances and just could not afford the time to come in, and actually asked his commander for like a leave of absence, so it's just some time off because he had this family stuff. It was just amazing, the tragedy in this soldier's family. Now, the commander, who was being held responsible by his commander, absolutely needed this guy because they had a busy schedule, and he was one of the key people, and he says, no, I can't afford to lose you. You have to come to drill. And the soldier just had to make a choice and stop coming. And he's marked AWOL, and he never responded to any of the phone calls or contact, but he had to do what he thought he had to do to take care of his family. And sure, was he AWOL? Yes, he was. He was AWOL for more than a year. Am I, by regulation and law, am I allowed to give him an other than honorable discharge? Absolutely, I can. But why? Okay. And if we hadn't asked those questions and we hadn't looked into it, if I was just too busy that day and I'm just signing whatever people recommend from the chain of command, which I never do, he ends up with a other than honorable discharge. Maybe some of these circumstances turned into something worse, and maybe he does end up in a criminal justice system, and then someone looks and says, oh, well, he got another than honorable discharge. He doesn't deserve a break. You know what? We got to look beyond that. We can't just look at what's on paper. Okay, we can't just look at what this veteran did in his community that got him into this criminal justice system. You can't just look at what kind of discharge they had and make a fair judgment about what this veteran, what his life is, or his or her life was all about. We got to go deeper than that. We got to do a little bit of work, right? We got to assign a mentor. We got to ask some questions. We got to look. You know, we're not asking in this veterans court system. We're not asking for amnesty for every single veteran. And it doesn't matter what they do, they deserve a break, and we should wipe their record clean. That's not what we're asking for. We're just asking to look a little deeper, okay? Let some people that have experience with veterans, that have experience with the military, try to mentor this person. And I think in most of these cases, you're gonna see that military discipline is still there. It might be buried, but it'll come back, okay? Someone who has a shared military experience, another veteran who's had similar circumstances in their background will be able to reach out to them and really make a difference here. And what you will see in the counties that have already done this, you'll see this is happening every single day. Do I support this program? Absolutely. Man, we need to have this in every county in Pennsylvania. We really do. And I understand that some of the veterans throughput in some of the smaller counties is may not be able to justify the expense. Well, there's other ways to do it. A track system off of another diversion court, or getting jurisdictional permission to go to an adjacent county. Every veteran in Pennsylvania deserves at least another look. They deserve at least someone to ask some questions on their behalf. Again, you look at what they did through their service, and I've seen it in a lot of extreme cases. I mentioned the time I spent in the Veteran Service Unit. I was most impressed by one of our veterans who's there serving a life sentence. He's not getting out. He's one of the top guys in that prison working employment issues for other veterans that are getting out. He works tirelessly day after day after day working, and they identify other veterans that are being incarcerated that are close to being released. And he works with them to, where are you going to settle down? Let's get you a job before you get out, okay? And he makes all the phone calls, and he does all the research, and he does things. And I said, so you got a life sentence, right? He said, yes. Yes, sir, I do. I said, so you're never getting out of here? No, sir. I said, so why are you doing this? He says, we're all in the military. He said, these are my battle buddies. You never leave anybody behind, right? It's too late for me, but I don't want any of these other guys, I don't want to see them ever back here ever again. He says, so I'm dedicating my life to make sure that they never have to come back here again. Okay? If they're doing that, why can't we do that? So I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you today. I know you're all connected to this system somehow with the veteran courts. We've been talking about this throughout the day. I'm just here to tell you it's worth it, okay? For one of those families that we really make a difference in, it's absolutely worth it. And as a society, we owe them. We broke them. We ought to be trying to fix them. So I appreciate your connection and your interest in this. And if there's anything my office could do to help you get a court in your county, please let me know. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and we'll soon have a date out to you for our 4th annual Veterans Court Symposium. So thank you very much for joining us today.